Welcome to the January 9th or 8th Select Board meeting. Ms. Capiello will be here later, and Mr. Scotia is online. So
Yes, I am.
Thank you. I'll be acting chairman for until Ms. Capiello arrives. So we'll start with a roll call.
Hardikoff here.
Gibson here.
Manstrek here.
Scotia here.
Scotia here remotely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Will you join me in a pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Agenda review. Any questions or concerns about the agenda as posted?
No, sir.
Mr. Gibson? Very good. We have a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve agenda.
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
Aye. All in favor?
And we have Jim online too.
And Jim came on. Thank you, sir. It's time for public comment. This is separate from the public hearing, but I'd like to make public comment. There are instructions for public comment. I would emphasize each speaker provide a single opportunity for comment limited to 3 minutes. Public comment should be limited to 15 minutes, the total time. Visitors should not expect a response to their comments or questions, since the select board may not have discussed or taken a position on a matter. Public comment is not a two-way dialogue between speakers, select board, and the town administrator or the town administrator. I will preserve strict order and decorum of all select board meetings. Obscene, violent, disruptive, disorderly comments, or those likely to induce violence, disruption, or disorder are not permitted and will not be tolerated. Thank you. Okay. Complaints regarding town staff should be directed to the town administrator. Are there any public comment other than our, yes, Mr. Walker.
Good evening, Rick Walker, 24 Green Hill Road. I just, by way of information,
Thank you, sir.
Looks green.
so I guess,
Okay, green. Thank
I
you.
guess it was. I put a petitioned article together that I'll present to the town clerk tomorrow and the school district clerk as well. A number of years ago, we had a joint advisory budget committee, and the school went out on their own and the town did their own. And what's been a little bit frustrating to me is that the left hand and the right hand don't know what each other's doing. And you'll see tonight that there's most of you folks are aware of it, but for those in the audience that are not, a little over a $9 million proposed budget for the town and a $28 million budget for the school. So we're a $37 million business, and the left hand and the right hand doesn't necessarily know what each other's doing. And my concern is, I don't, we've got, the town has some big ticket items coming up, the school has some big ticket items coming up, and if we're not working together, then what happens is we won't get any of it. So the petition article that I have basically asks for the town, if this passes, if the voters pass this, it would request that the Board of Selectmen appoint 2 members to the budget committee. The school board would appoint 2 members to the budget committee, and the 2 sides would work together and appoint the 5th budget committee member. And then each side would put an alternate in. And again, just my intention behind going back to this is so that people can the left hand, both sides will know what's going on. So I would encourage the Board of Selectmen to sign this, or anybody else in the room that wants to. If you choose to sign the thing, you have to sign both of them, because one is for the school district, one's for the town. And I'm going to leave them on the table.
Thank you,
Thank
sir. Is there any other public comment? If you're online and would like to make comment, if you're on the Teams, if you'll press the raise your hand button. For those of you who are on telephone,
*6.
*6. Thank you.
And that unmutes yourself and wait to be recognized by the chair. Seeing any activity online, there will be separate public comments under each one of the public hearings. And then there's also a public comment portion at the end of the meeting as well.
Thank you, sir. All right, public hearing. Is anyone here representing the school board as an invited guest? Does not appear to be at this point. Proposed operating budget. Mr. McIver is going to present a presentation, which you can see online.
And thank you. So this presentation is something, this budget in this presentation is a result of countless hours of work from department heads and the select board and the budget committee. The select board and the budget committee are intimately familiar with the budget at this point. This is the public hearing. This is the stage of the process where after this public hearing, the select board is expected to finalize the budget. And this is what will be presented to voters at deliberative session on February 3rd. That's a Saturday. And at town meeting vote on March 12th. That's a Tuesday. So this information is a highlight of a very lengthy and in detail process. We're very proud to share that every detail of the entire budget is available online. You'll see the URL on the bottom of every slide. It's barrington.nh.gov/2024 budget. This presentation, along with every detail that you see, is available at that address. Some slides have specific URLs to the section of the budget binder that you'll find the information that that slide talks about. We don't have time to go through all of those details, and so that they're available there. You're welcome to find any detail you're looking for. But if you don't find it, please ask us. You're welcome to ask any questions tonight, and you can also send an email, call me, send me an email at any time. Happy to describe any detail of the budget. Our goal in preparing the people's budget, the residents of Barrington, their budget, is to make sure that it reflects the balance of the cost and the level of service that residents expect. And so we can only do that if residents are involved in the process and give us feedback. So with that out of the way, starting with what we're going to cover, and this is easier to follow if you're looking at it for anybody that's following the presentation, a printed copy, but we have just under a $9 million budget, which is a $650,000 increase. Importantly, our non-property tax revenue is up 5.74%. We'll talk about why that's important. The increases come from inflation and staffing. We'll look at those details. We'll talk about how busy we are. Again, if we talk about a level of service, what does that mean? What services are we providing? And how much are we doing with this $9 million? Talk about how big Barrington is. You know, we talk about maintaining rural character and we have this small town feel. We'll talk about how that can kind of be challenging because we really are a big community. And then we'll talk about how small our municipal tax rate is, which is important because the singular point that most people care about is what their property tax bill looks like, and the decisions that we make have an impact on that property tax rate. But we need to understand what ours looks like and how it compares to have a fully informed decision. So this process, as I said, was a process that started in August. If you ask department heads, they'll tell you they never stop developing a budget because as soon as they finish developing one, they start spending another and they're taking notes on what to incorporate into the next budget. Because what we do when we develop a budget is it's a zero-based budget. We start from scratch every time and only ask for those items that we need. So The mission, vision, and values established by the Select Board are the guiding principles of not only the work that the Select Board and staff do, but this budget development process. So the mission, briefly, the Barrington Select Board will provide proactive leadership, engaging in effective communication with public and municipal employees while overseeing a government that promotes a resilient and sustainable community, public safety-wise preservation and development of the social and natural environment, maintenance and development of infrastructure, and support of our community services that assure quality of life. The vision, we, the elected governing board of Barrington, New Hampshire, seek to shape a future that values our past, preserves our natural and human resources, while working together with the public toward a bright economic and community-oriented lifestyle through the provision of effective governmental services that characterize a healthy and dynamic community. Read through these because a lot of these topics, you'll see how they impact budget development, talking about level of services, preserving human resources, having an effective government service for the residents of the town. So the values, these are the core values of your select board and the municipal government. Careful financial stewardship of resources. This group, as advised by the budget committee, cares a lot about every single dollar and cent that is raised by property taxes or paid in a user fee, and this process is a result of that. Transparent government with open communication and broad participation. Again, that budget binder is over 400 pages of documents organized, so you don't have to kind of sift through the whole thing, but with the table of contents and links so you can find the details you're looking for. Yeah, they have printed copies, right? Honesty and high ethical standards, civil, fair, and responsive service, wise collaborative decisions based upon objective facts, and a focus on both the present and the future. Okay, so the budget. We talked about the budget as compared to 2023. Again, it's important to keep in mind we compare that to show you how the budget is growing, but this is a zero-based budgeting where each year we start from scratch and each department head prepares a budget proposal that details exactly what they need to provide the services that they have. And those services change year over year, which is one of the reasons we utilize zero-based budgeting. In 2024, the result of the budget development process is an $8,998,280 budget, which is an increase of just under $650,000 or 7.78%. So revenue, when we're leading up to talking about the tax rate and tax rate impact, revenue is an essential part of that conversation because we collect only about 50% of our funds to operate the municipal government through property taxes. The remaining comes from other revenue sources. When you go to the transfer station and buy bags, when you pull a building permit and pay fees, when you register your motor vehicle. So those revenue sources and tracking those and how those increase or decrease is critically important to balance against a budget increase. And we'll talk about some specific areas where it played even a more important role. So in 2024, our revenue is up 5.74%. That's the projection. And those are, the result of that is the tax effort. And this is what we use to give you an estimated tax rate impact. So the operating budget as proposed, taking into account revenue, would have an estimated tax rate impact of 13 cents or $56 to the tax bill of a $425,000 home. So you'll see that information on the warrant article as you will with all other warrant articles on the town ballot that have a financial impact. And the value of your property is an important part of that equation. $425,000 is the current average of a single family home in Barrington. Yours might be valued more, yours might be valued less, but we update that average every year to make sure it's reflective of our property values in Barrington. So that 13 cents is on a $16.69 total tax rate. And importantly, the town portion of that is $2.66, which we'll talk about in a second. So I mentioned that there were two main areas for the increases in the budget. Inflation and staffing. So looking at inflation, just pulling out some of the big changes in the budget, paving is up $50,000. Paved roads, this is things like line striping. Some of the other maintenance work we do on paved roads is up $15,000. Winter contractors up $15,000. Recycling costs have gone up $15,000. Trash bags $12,500. Salt $10,000. Police vehicles $10,000. Highway vehicle maintenance $10,000. That comprises almost a quarter of the budget increases. And in each one of those categories, this is the cost to maintain the same level of service as 2023. We're not asking for $50,000 more in paving to do more paving than we did in 2023. We have a separate warrant article asking you to consider adding more into that pot to do more than we did in 2023. But this is what we're asking for to maintain the level of service. Asphalt is a petroleum product, has experienced above average inflation consistently, and we're feeling that. Each one of these other categories, these are the cost increases that we're experiencing due to a variety of factors, inflation, staffing, supply chain issues, to maintain the level of service. And so it's important to keep that in mind, because if we're trying to balance the cost and the level of service, a lot of the conversations that the Budget Committee and the Select Board had through this process were, we're committed to maintaining this level of service. And if we're committed to maintaining a level of service in some areas, and these are good examples, we need to increase the budget, in some cases a substantial amount, just to maintain that level of service. And inflation is an interesting point to calculate for municipal impact, because we budget once a year, and we start our budget development process in August for the next calendar year. And so inflation is one of those components that sometimes has a little bit of a catch-up effect on a municipal budget, because we're not budgeting real time, we're budgeting in the future. And so we only have one opportunity a year to insert inflationary impacts on an operating budget. Okay, staffing is the second one. Don't expect you to look at this slide and read every detail, but it's there, and the information is available not only in this presentation but online, so you can see the discrete details. So there are two components to any staffing budget increase: wages and benefits. And it's important to monitor both of those, both together and separately. So census updates, these are changes in staffing throughout the year, reflect some of the impact for the staffing category. There's a 3% cost of living adjustment in the budget as advised by the data. There's a pay plan step increase, which reflects the merit increase for employees. There's benefit cost increase. Health insurance costs have really not stabilized since COVID, which we're really anxious for them too, but this is something that the public and private sector are feeling alike. The fire department, in 2022, there was another full-time position added, and for the year of 2023, half of that position was paid for out of the revolving fund, with the plan to bring the second half to the operating budget this year. As of this year, we're responsible for the landscaping and maintenance of the properties in town, and so there's a position in the highway department, a seasonal position that covers the seasonal landscaping duties that we're responsible for. The recreation administrative assistant, 9 additional hours, which are currently paid for from the revolving fund in the operating budget this year. The building department, we're adding a half of an FTE, so 20 hours a week part-time employee. And remember when I mentioned the importance of revenue? So the select board, as advised by the budget committee, made a policy decision to increase the building permit fees, as they're allowed to do, in order to cover the costs of this additional position. And this is a perfect example of that department is busy because of the development happening in town, right? The houses behind us, the subdivisions that are going through the approval process or the construction process. And what the select board and the budget committee, what they felt was that it shouldn't be a responsibility of the residents living in Barrington now and paying taxes now to fund or subsidize those services. State law says that those services can be funded by user fees, and they should be funded 100% by user fees. So there's demand in that office from the volume of building permits being pulled and projects going on. So in adding this half of an FTE full-time equivalent, the select board, starting January 1st, so this has already gone into effect, increased the building permit fees from $8.50 per thousand to $10 per thousand of value. And so that's a way that revenue is used to offset the impact of operating budget increases. There's a proposed administrative assistant in the fire department, part-time at 24 hours a week. The library processor last year and the technology position, the hours were changed, and that went into effect in April. So this year we have 25% of that impact in this year's operating budget to reflect the full year's cost. This is something that we did as a customer service effort. transfer station right now has hours, expanded hours in the summer, and it's on Thursdays. And the 2 months a year that we bring in the most trash are January and December. And it's always kind of inconvenient for folks to say, okay, hey, when do the summer hours start and when do they end? So we crunched the numbers and realized that most of the trash we bring in is in January and December, or the peak. And it was $8,000 to keep the same hours year round at the transfer station. And so that is a proposal in this year's budget. And that's another area where the select board is actually considering tonight an increase in the user fees in the transfer station, which help fund this type of overhead and others. And finally, the library regraded the program and social media specialist, and that had a small cost impact. Moving on, this is what the warrant article will look like. It asks the town to raise and appropriate just under $9 million for the operating budget. It says if the article fails, there'll be a default budget of $8,666,644. So that default budget is last year's budget plus any contractual obligations. And the details of that default budget, again, are available at barrington.nh.gov/2024 budget. The tax rate impact, as we discussed, will be listed on all of the warrant articles, as well as a recommendation note from the Advisory Budget Committee and Select Board. The Select Board will be finalizing their recommendation votes tonight, and the Advisory Budget Committee will be finalizing theirs tomorrow. And so those will be included on the warrant going into deliberative session. Again, we talk about the importance of the tax rate. Currently, our tax rate is $16.69 per thousand of assessed value. $12.31 is education, $2.66 is municipal, and $1.72 is the county. Represented in this chart, you'll see where your tax dollars are going. And the municipal portion we'll talk about later, having a municipal portion of our tax rate that is 16% of the overall tax rate is an outlier. And I would even go so far as to say it's in a pretty extreme outlier based on Barrington's size. And I'll show you some data that supports that in a minute. The reason that's important is because we are asking for more this year than we had last year, but we do a lot with every dollar that residents give us to provide them services. And it's important to keep that in mind, again, if we're balancing a cost of services and a level of service that we provide. So we fund local government service, not just with property tax, but with vehicle registration, fees for service, state and federal aid, and other funding sources. Represented in this chart, you'll see 51% of our revenue comes from property taxes, 23% from vehicle registration. State and federal aid is 13%. That pie, that piece of the pie has continued to grow over the last couple of years. Both the legislature and the governor have committed to expanding aid to municipalities, mostly through rooms and meals tax, and some also through some additional appropriations for roads and bridges. Fees for service, this is your transfer station, your building department, et cetera, and other miscellaneous sources. The biggest change in the miscellaneous category has been interest on investments, right? 2 years ago, we made less than $1,500 in the entire year in interest on investments. To give you an idea, at any given moment, we have between $14 and $7 million in the bank. So that's property taxes we collect. We send about a $2 million check to the school every month. And we now, in 2024, expect to collect about $250,000 in interest on investments. That has a real impact on your property taxes, right? And I'll give a lot of credit to our treasurer who stays on our banks and where that cash exists to make sure that we're earning the best for our residents. Grants, huge piece of it, right? I list federal aid as our funding sources. We don't really collect regular revenue through federal aid, but grants, most of this funding has come down through the federal government in one way or another. Single biggest grant award that we expended this year was the Green Hill Bridge, just over $2.1 million. Other bridges, almost $150,000. Road grants, almost $140,000. Emergency equipment, $125,000. We have an emergency generator coming for the communication tower and the building at 105 Ramsdale Lane. That's a $75,000 grant. We updated the housing chapter of our master plan on a $23,000 grant. We preserved another tax ledger for $15,000 on a $15,000 grant, and other grants, including an energy audit at 105 Ramsdale Lane. So almost $2.75 million of grants that we brought into Barrington offsetting costs. Chief Walker mentioned in public comment about the costs we have coming up. It's really important that we talk transparently about the infrastructure costs we anticipate. And the capital improvement program details that specifically, but every piece of money that we can secure to offset those future costs and invest in the infrastructure without asking taxpayers to increase their taxes or pony up more money, we're able to do more with less or more with, almost the same. And so this is a critically important area that we have done a lot better in recent years, securing the money that's available for our residents. Okay, I want to just highlight some of these areas. I won't read through them all, but we are very busy. We provide a lot of services, and we have more than 10 departments that do a variety of very different things, right? You might only think of the town when you go to pay your taxes or register your car, but the assessing department maintains 5,000 parcels. The building department in 1 year issued 757 permits. I talked about the almost $3 million in grants. The fire department and ambulance service, almost 1,200 calls. The highway department, who we're all very appreciative for this time of year, and the 24-hour marathon of road maintenance that they did recently, 80 miles of road that they maintain, right? Land use department processed 75 applications. The library, tens of thousands of borrowed items. Police department, almost 20,000 calls. Recreation department, constantly growing programs and participants. The tax collector issued over $30 million in tax bills and collects all of those dollars, right? 74% of those tax dollars go to the school, but she's the customer service representative with her deputy tax collector that interface with every single resident that comes in to pay their taxes and talk about their concerns with the community and the concerns of increased taxes. That's a lot of really good work that they do. And most all of them leave with a smile on their face, even if they come in really upset about the money that they're handing over to the town. I think most of that is because her paid stamp is a smiley face. If you haven't come into the tax collector's office to pay your tax bill in person, I encourage you to do that just so you can get that smiley face stamp. 13,000 vehicles, and this always blows my mind, 2,251 registered dogs. Right? We have 9,500 residents, and I know that if I ask for a show of hands, there's probably a dog or two in the room that's not registered. We multiply that by 9,500 residents. There's a lot of dogs in this town. And the transfer station, almost 2,000 tons of trash and recycling. So the reason that's important is because we do a lot, and that is a drain on all of the services that we provide. And again, if I'm talking about the budget that is really budget increases to maintain a level of service, it's important to understand that level of service we provide. So just briefly in a couple of slides here, this bar chart shows you that Barrington is big by a few of the most important metrics, and that our tax rate is small by equally important metrics. So starting with the first item, that 33% red bar is our municipal tax rate of $16.69. So all of these percentiles are lining up all 234 cities and towns in the state and identifying where Barrington falls. So our tax rate is smaller than 2/3 of the state, okay? So the reason that's important, we're just gonna focus on the red bars for a minute. The reason that's important is because by population, we're bigger than 87% of the towns and cities in the state, right? If we provide services to people, the more people you have, the more services you have to provide. So our tax rate is smaller than 2/3, but only 13% are bigger than Barrington. Value, right? What is the value of our community, the tax value of our community? At 1.84 billion, 83rd percentile. Only 17% of the towns and cities in New Hampshire are bigger than Barrington for total value. And land area, we talked about the 80 miles of road. At 46 square miles, only 20% of the towns and cities in New Hampshire are bigger than Barrington. And we'll see some maps in a second. Most of those are far north of here, right? And so Barrington is a big community, but we do a lot with a little. So now looking at these green bars, right? These are our municipal tax rate. And the municipal tax rate for the last three of those categories are our municipal tax rate per population, per value, per square mile. And so a way for correcting the municipal tax rate for those different metrics so we can understand how we stack up to the other communities in the state. So this first one shows that we're in the 7th percentile. So I told you that we're an outlier, having our municipal tax rate be 16% of the total tax rate. That is smaller than 93% of the towns and cities in New Hampshire. The reason that's important is because we're big, right? By land area and value and population, more than 80% of the towns and cities in New Hampshire are bigger, but our municipal tax rate is incredibly small. We are down there with the most rural communities in New Hampshire that don't even have a police department, have an all-volunteer fire department, and in that mix is Barrington. And we provide pretty darn good services for that value. So by population, we're the 6th percentile. Our municipal tax rate per capita is smaller than 94% of the towns and cities in New Hampshire. Per value, 10th percentile, per land area, 8th percentile. And so I say that only to demonstrate that we care a lot about the dollars that we have and the tax dollars that we use. We stretch them as far as we can. I would argue that we're as lean as we possibly can be, and I think the data supports that. And so when we present you a budget, even if it has a 7% increase, I think it's essential to know that though that is the increase that is minimally necessary to maintain a level of services. And with that data, we're still in the bottom tier as far as municipal tax rate and the services we provide. So just quickly, these are maps that I had made through our contract with Stratford Regional Planning, no additional cost, important to note. But each one of these maps that you can look online and see the specific details, but you'll see the green is Barrington, in case you didn't know where we are. And you'll see that each one of those red highlighted towns and cities are the ones that we are bigger than, right? So only the white towns and cities are larger than Barrington. So upper left is population, in the middle is valuation, and in the right is land area. You'll see the land area, the top half of the state is those 20% of the communities. You'll see for population, it's the population centers. Look at the cities, Manchester, Nashua, Concord, Derry, some of the seacoast communities, Keene on the left, Lebanon, and then there's Barrington, right? One is not like the others, and Barrington is the outlier there. For valuation, you'll see it's where it's the value the value centers of New Hampshire. So the Lakes region, down Manchester, Derry, Nashua, the seacoast communities, and then there's Barrington. And then for land area, again, it's the top tier of the state primarily that represent the larger communities by land area. So same thing, only those red communities are smaller than Barrington, and these are those metrics I told you about. So starting on the top row, we have our municipal portion of the tax rate, then we have tax rate per land area, tax rate per value, and then on the bottom we have tax rate per population, and then the municipal tax rate of 266. These maps line up with those other maps, and they're inverse, right? The municipal tax rate per population, only those population centers are smaller than Barrington per capita, Manchester, Nashua, Concord. In the land area, which is the upper middle, it is the Lakes region communities, and Barrington is the only one in the southern half of the state, right? We are an outlier. And so this is really important information. I encourage you to talk about this information with your friends and neighbors, point them to the website and help them understand what we do with what we're given in those same conversations when we're talking about $500 or $1,000 increases on their tax bill that they experience year over year. It is money that we handle very carefully and will continue to do so. That is the budget presentation. Select Board's packet and linked to the Town Administrator report are some of the most important budget documents. A summary by function of the budget, so you'll see where the increases come from. The warrant article, the warrant estimated tax rate impact. So we'll talk more about this when we talk about the warrant, but that 13 cents per thousand for the operating budget is in there. Another document relative to the tax rate impact per warrant article, which we'll talk about more in a second. That average home calculation, how we got to 425,000. And then obviously a link to this presentation, which you have printed copies for. Happy to take questions or comments from the Select Board. Welcome, Joyce.
Thank you. Thank you.
And then we'll open a public hearing.
Just a comment. I wanted to thank our advisory budget committee for all of the work that they have done on this. They bring up amazing questions as they're going through the budget development process. And again, these are volunteers spending hours and hours of their time. And so as this is presented, I can't imagine if we did a scaled number of hours that everyone put into this, what it would actually be. But that's a group that I think as volunteers within our community need to be thanked.
And has it been said that the ABC just hasn't met yet? They're meeting
Right.
tomorrow night to take their votes. Any other comments?
And Jim has his hand up.
Oh. Jim?
Yeah, hey, Connor, what a great slide, and thank you for all that you've done to really just lay it out there so it's black and white for people to see. So just want to say kudos to you guys too.
For red and green. For red and green.
We go right into public comment.
Yep, so public hearing, so this will be a public comment on the operating budget as proposed. Address any questions or accept any comments relative to the operating budget. And speaking now doesn't prevent your ability to speak in other public hearings or in the public comment sessions.
So we'll open it for the room first and then for those people online. Any comments from the room? Doesn't look like it. Okay, so let's go online.
You can raise your hand if you're in the Teams program, or you can press *6 if you are on your phone. Not seeing anything online either.
Okay, so then I guess we will move to, yes,
Move that we approve the 2024 operating budget as presented.
And put on the warrant for voters.
Put it on the warrant for vote, is what I meant.
is there a second?
I'll second.
Roll call,
Hardikoff, aye.
Gibson, aye.
Mantrick, aye.
Capello, aye, and then online,
Goshen.
Jim?
Need to unmute him.
Sakosha, aye.
Thank you. All right, so the budget has passed, and that will go on the warrant. So,
For the vote of 504.
We'll do our recommendation votes in a minute.
Oh.
Yeah, so this is putting it on the warrant, and then once we get past the public hearings, then we'll take our recommendation votes on each warrant article.
All right.
Or maybe we can bundle some of them, who knows?
Riveting.
Process.
all right. So move on to library.
Yes.
We're going to talk about how we're going to present it later. Correct.
Right.
So library folks, come forward. Sorry to see this.
So as our library trustee chair, Susan Gaudiello, and the foundation chair, president, Roger Gingrich, approach the table, this is a public hearing required for bond article. So this is a bond request. Importantly, the operating budget and these bond articles were noticed in the paper, one of the few notices we still have to put in the newspaper. And the proposal is a $3.6 million warrant article with currently a $3.3 million bond. And so the trustee chair and the foundation president will talk about the project in the budget, and the ask for the select board will be to add this to the warrant. There's one additional item which we'll discuss, which will be how to handle some of the donations that they have in the pipeline and factor that into the warrant article. So I would propose that we review that after their presentation but before we finalize the warrant article.
All right,
Okay.
Great.
proceed, please.
As Connor said, I'm Susan Gaudiello, and chair of the library is Roger Gingrich. So we decided we'd do this together so we can talk about all the money as well as the project. And Roger also serves on our building committee. And we do have a number of people in the audience I saw coming in from trustees and friends and building committee. So I'm going to take 10 seconds to just go through how we got to where we are. As you know, there have been two prior failed bond articles proposing a new library, one in 2019 and one in 2020, and those both were for approximately $4 million, a few dollars less, I think, than 4 million. The general consensus that we took from voters, and people had many reasons why they might have voted against those, but bottom line was it was too costly, and many people thought that it was a larger building than the town needed, which fit into that cost. With COVID, things sort of, I don't want to say went on the back burner, but took some time. And in the last couple of years, we came back to it. We sought resident input through some survey and information sessions. We decided to downsize the scope of a new building to be no more than 10,000 square feet, less than we wanted, but manageable. And also in that same time, construction costs increased by an average of something like 40% since 2020. So the goal of trying to have a smaller building and cut the cost and cope with 40% increased rates was daunting, to say the least. We were fortunate that a new option presented itself, and that was the availability of the Frisbee Medical Office Building on Route 125, just north of Caliph's Corner. For those who might be listening, if you're not familiar with that building, it is in the same area as the veterinary hospital right there. It's a very nice looking building. It's less square footage than the 10,000. It's about 8,500 square feet, but it has a good layout and it's quality construction. The construction has been looked at by numbers of folks who all agree that it is good quality construction. And renovation of a building, of an existing building, generally costs significantly less than starting from scratch with a whole new building. What is on the screen right now is the floor plan. Many of you may have seen this. It is also posted on the foundation, the Library Foundation website. And the different colors represent different areas. But you'll see that the advantages of the building in the floor plan is that it is an open, we will make it an open plan. Right now it's filled with 25 little examining rooms, so it doesn't look very open. It would be hard to figure how that's going to turn into a library. But once you take most all of those walls down, you end up with what you see on the screen. We end up having specific areas, a children's area, which is that sort of light melon color on my left, an adult area, an area towards the front for young adults, teens, which they have no place in the library now. We also were able to incorporate a Barrington, what we call the Barrington Room or Barrington History Room, which would be a room where we would be able to house the historical collection that we have, that, and I'm sure there are more materials. I know there are in my basement. My husband would be thrilled to donate those to a better place. But, and also a meeting room that's not as large as what had been envisioned years ago, but it's larger than what we have now, and it has adequate storage space in it. And in that central area is very good sight line for staffing. What a one-level building and good sight lines means that you don't have to increase staffing. When you get multi-level, or you have safety issues and supervisory issues. So we feel that this kind of layout will allow us to move forward without having to make substantial increases in staffing. We are not planning any expansion of the current footprint. There is adequate land if there were modest need to make expansion somewhere down the pike, that's available at that site, but we are not looking at making any expansion of the building. They're also included in the design several small study rooms or meeting rooms. We get a lot of people who are looking for whether it's tutoring or interview rooms, that sort of thing, and need some level of confidentiality as well. That we don't have anywhere in our building, or I think around town for that matter at this point. That would be able to be accommodated. And finally, adequate staff areas. Those of you who've been to the library, we have like 4 staff crammed into one very small room, which is not only difficult for working environment, it was not very healthy during COVID either. So this has a better arrangement for those folks as well. As far as renovation, we've been blessed with having a very active and very useful, well-skilled building committee to look at the plans and to ask a lot of questions and bring a lot of their expertise forward. We also well, I will say we're very pleased with the support we've had from the select board and the negotiation to be able to purchase the building if this bond passes for $1 million. It's not cheap. We would love to have had a complete donation of the building, but that didn't work out. So $1 million feels like a very fair price. And then we've had multiple assessments, building inspections done. The septic system, the water system. We had a separate evaluation done of the HVAC system. And I think all of those materials, I believe, have been made available to the select board as well. So it is a building that is about 23 years old now, because we just got into 24. I think it was initially built in 2001. There was a couple of small additions in 2007. The heating system is basically pretty close to or already at the end of its lifespan. We were very concerned, you may recall from earlier budget that we had looked at, the construction management firm had just put sort of a placeholder of $300,000 to replace that, and that was kind of a shock to our system. But getting another evaluation of that system, they felt that the 3 units that really are beyond saving at this point could be replaced for about $90,000. And Connor, if you want to put up the budget.
Yes.
At this point. So the estimate on that is about $90,000 within the building construction line item that you'll see under construction, 1.7 million. That does include some additional money for the HVAC system, I think largely related to reducting, going from 25 rooms to open space, that sort of thing, and probably some, I'm going to say routine servicing on 2 of the 5 heating units. Certainly, going forward, that entire system will be completely analyzed in more depth. It may be that replacing the whole system could be even cheaper if we only need a couple of zones, that sort of thing. The other thing that we looked at was, and asked for separate pricing on, was the roof. The roof is not in bad shape. There are some loose shingles. Most of it is 23 years old. The additions were blended in well, but those obviously are somewhat newer. But that also brought us into the question of, do we want to consider any solar electric on the building? And in our public information sessions, when we talked about sustainability, the people who participated were very, very strong on wanting to have particularly solar, but looking really at energy efficiency. We asked Jack Bingham, who's on the Energy Committee and has his own company as well, to look at that for us. And he did analyze what areas, really 2 areas of the roof would be potential. There's a west-facing and a south-facing roof that would accommodate those. But again, with that age of the roof, we wouldn't want to put solar panels on an old roof that is probably going to have to be completely replaced in 8 or 10 years. So our building committee decided 2 things about solar and about the roof. They recommended that we replace the entire roof, replacing just part of it, and then going back in 8 years or 5 years to replace the rest is not very cost efficient, apparently. Makes sense, and it's disruptive. So it was felt that for the estimate of less than $84,000, which is not chump change, I know, but that it would be worthwhile doing that now during the renovation process. With respect to solar, we still would like to move forward with that, but we did not include the cost of that in the budget. We feel that there will be grant opportunities. We're aware of a few. We'll be pursuing those, as well as other donations, so that we will work to accumulate the estimated costs, which Jack Bingham shared with us, is about $34,000. Jack's, through his company, has actually volunteered to donate the cost of installation. So this is really the panels and other related cost of materials. So that's really a great deal for us. But we aren't going to ask the taxpayers to cover that cost. I think if there's anything else on the cost side that I wanted to comment. I think those are the major cost items. The budget, as you see, shows a total cost of the library project of $3,331,324. We pared back a couple of areas in addition, things like furniture and things like that. We did include some money for security systems. In talking with Connor, we are aware that the town is changing what they're doing for security system. We would like to basically be on board and share the same system or the same vendor. We don't really have a cost of what that is, so that's kind of I'm going to say a plug number. But we wanted to make sure that we had something in there for that kind of expense. Roger will talk about the foundation contribution, but I will say our strong goal is to get the library portion of the bond to be under $3 million. So taking you back to whatever, 4 years ago, with a proposal of $4 million for the bond. In other words, the project cost more than that because there was donation money on top of that. 40% increase in costs and come in with a budget that's under $3 million. A smaller building, but we feel the layout and the efficiency. You know, we're great, as we've just heard, we're great at a town of doing really well with a modest amount. We think this is a great, obviously we think it's a great deal for the town. It's an opportunity that will not be around next year. So this is our year to make this happen. In addition, on the bond, I'm only talking about the library portion. I know the select board wanted to add $300,000 to this bond, and I think that's very logical because when we move out of the old library, which has not had any improvement in that building except a barn door that the Friends installed for us over one of the rooms, you know, carpeting, ceiling tiles, whatever, and I believe they want to install a stairway, which makes sense between the upstairs and downstairs. The $300,000 for rec, and Connor or Jesse can speak more to that, is the minimum amount needed, they feel, in order to make that usable space for rec and for the community as a whole, should no other monies be forthcoming for the rec, for that purpose. With that, I can answer questions now. I can hand it right to Connor, to Roger. Your thoughts?
Anybody want to entertain any questions at this point? Comments?
Any idea of the annual operating increase for a larger space?
Good question. I didn't bring those numbers with me. Those were questions that also the Advisory Budget Committee asked us. With respect to staffing, unless we have, you know, some flood of, we do expect with a new library there'll be much more utilization, but we feel that we can manage that. Going from a 3,700 square feet to 8,500 square feet, we believe that we will need more janitorial. Right now we have, I think it's budgeted at 11 hours a week, which is really 10 hours plus an hour to be accumulated for shampooing rugs or whatever. I don't have an actual estimate. Connor looked at numbers based on a square footage amount that he got from, I don't know where you got those numbers, but so.
Professional resources.
But I looked at it as saying, well, maybe we'd need to have a 20-hour a week, you know, a non-benefited person. We could look at cleaning service, but basically that would be the staffing side of it. We have not been able to get from HCA, the owner, numbers on utility cost. They gave us some numbers, but they looked really weird, and we needed to get.
Propane? Is it LP?
It is on propane.
Okay.
We believe that the generator, there's a huge generator, and it's functional. It's still being tested. We believe it is a diesel generator. I think at our building committee, there was discussion around that, and that's how those usually operate of that size. So we don't really have good utility numbers for you on that, but that obviously would be additional. We considered the snow removal, landscaping. The building has mature landscaping. We're not planning to change that. We might cut down a few trees or limbs in order to, particularly if there are a couple that are leaning over the building, but basically we're not adding anything there. But we spoke with Connor about, with the highway department, plow the driveway. And so at some point, I know you can only ask the highway department to do so much, so many roads and so many new developments and so on before there's an impact there. And so we haven't been able to calculate that, but if we continue to have mild winters, I guess it won't be quite as big an issue. Trying to think of what were some of the other, I think staffing, utilities is a little uncertain, but that would be the extra cost there. We are not, we do not expect a change in the actual operating budget of the library with respect to purchasing materials and so on. We are not looking actually at increasing the collection. We keep it refreshed by weeding and adding, and there really isn't a lot of room in this building for more, a lot more materials. So we don't see a lot more addition there, other than, you know, really the biggest increases in the operating budget as far as that sort of aspect of the library budget has been on digital materials, and we are always evaluating that. Very popular, downloadable ebooks, audiobooks, you know, all that sort of thing, and we've kept that in pretty well under control right now by the increase in the overdrive. We've decreased another service that we use, Hoopla. So we're going to be continuing to monitor that.
Thank you.
Did you have some figures? He was referencing what. you
Oh,
came up
for
with.
custodial. Yeah, so the, for that type of space, there are ranges of per square foot janitorial costs, and the basis of those depends on frequency of addressing the cost. But the numbers that I provided for your response to the budget committee were a space similar to a library and what the square footage cost would be. And I believe it was a doubling or a tripling of the existing budget and the budget now is only 11 hours.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think probably getting those materials in with the frequently asked questions, which we can do, and then along with the other materials would be a great way to make sure that those answers to very good questions from the budget committee exist with all the other materials.
The other thing that we looked at that's not really an increased cost, but the library does utilize the services of the facilities manager. He's been a tremendous help to the library in the past year. And so I think Connor looked at what by square footage of town buildings, what % of his salary would be devoted to the library. Hopefully with a newly renovated building, it won't be quite as challenging as some of the older buildings.
Tracy, follow up.
1 year for will it take about a year for the reconstruction of the interior?
Yes.
Okay.
If this were to pass,
See any increases really for a year, so.
oh yes,
Okay.
this would be probably mid 2025. The process would be after the bond passes. Obviously, Connor moves ahead with the financing aspect of it. The foundation continues to raise money. The architect does the final design plans, works with the construction manager. The plan would be reaching out to contractors and getting all that accomplished over the summer so that construction would start in the fall of 2024 and be completed sometime spring, early summer of 2025.
And one of the other things that you pointed out at the building committee was the building itself is very efficient as far as heating is concerned, especially compared to the building they're in now, which is not very efficient. So that may help. I mean,
Has very good windows,
Yeah.
you know, so we don't have to worry about replacing those. So,
And
Roger.
actually, in addition to the solar, the Energy Committee really looks forward to working with the library on, there's a lot of exciting opportunities they feel for efficiencies, even in the construction of the air handling and the heating and stuff. There are perhaps some cost savings there in the short term and then in the long term for operating costs.
We would be very happy to entertain any ideas. We are concerned about the long-range operating cost of any project. So that's one of the reasons why we really would like to be able to incorporate solar. We don't know how much of the electric bill that would actually cover because we don't have the kilowatt hours from the HCA folks as far as the history of that. And again, our use might be wildly different. One thing we'll be totally replacing throughout the building is going with LED lighting. The current lighting in their hallways and such is, I guess, incandescent. So we hope to realize savings in that way as well.
Roger?
Thanks. Well, I'm Roger Gingrich, and I live at 32 Peabody Way. I'm here as the president of the Barrington Library Foundation, a position I've been privileged to hold since 2019. I'd first sort of like to reiterate the thanks to the town administrator and the select board and the ABC for sort of smoothing the way to the possible acquisition of this building with voter approval in March. There was a lot of hurdles, big and small, to get over, and really appreciate the transparency and the effort that was put into that. So just a moment to say something about the foundation, of which people may not know an awful lot about. We're a nonprofit created in 2016 for the library, and we work in lockstep with the trustees. They really are the baton holder, and we look to them for advice and counsel as to what we do and when we do it. We have two sort of main jobs. One is promotion of the building effort, the projects along the way since 2019. I refer to this more often as trying to inform the electorate accurately and completely of what we're about and what we're doing. A job that's tough, and I appreciate Connor's offer to put some of the FAQ stuff on the town website to help broaden the viewership of what we're doing and why we're doing it. The second is fundraising. And both of these things really kind of are locked together in what we do day to day. As the Christmas holidays approached and the new year was just over the horizon, we sort of got the signal that we needed to go ahead with our plans. Since post-New Year, we have about 60 days or so before March 12th. It doesn't give one an awful lot of time to be out there beating the drums and looking for additional funding. And so having watched the boys in the boat, we're all powered up now to really hit this full speed. The job ahead of us, as has been alluded to, is to try to reduce the amount of the bond request. In the last week, we've raised, and I'll qualify that in just a bit, about $43,000, which brings us up to what we wanted to have, and what we have today is $356,000 to add to the to replace the 212 up there. Now, it's not the full story. The two major bond people who are going to be making this cash donation hold CDs, one of which is coming due on the 14th of this month and the other on the 24th, 15th of the month and the 24th. Of February. And so that's real money. It sits there in a CD, and both of them have told us, one in writing and one to have a meeting and put it in writing, that money is as good as ours, but that's where it is. They're in CDs, not in our bank. And so we've hit the road running this first week post New Year with lots of plans to get out there into the community to try to solicit donations. And our goal is to get up another 250 and if possible, even $500,000. I mean, that's going to be tough in this particular economic environment, but that's our goal. And as Michelangelo once said, if we shoot low and we make the mark rather than shooting high, and I'd rather shoot high and maybe come in a little bit below that, and that's the temperament at which we're approaching this problem. Happy to take any questions.
So I think just to be clear, what Roger is alluding to and what Connor, I think, alluded to earlier is there are two organizations in town, the Friends of the Barrington Library and the Barrington Historic Society, both of whom have pledged significant amount of money, but their money is held in CDs that are maturing in February after deliberative. So we are hoping that the select board will vote to allow those secure dollars to be included in the amount of money in the warrant article reflected as being donated by the foundation. That will help to reduce significantly the amount required to be borrowed for the project.
That'll be a select board determination. So the differences between cash on hand and pledges. Pledges are excluded from the amount reducing a bond because those aren't guaranteed. And if those aren't collected, then project costs would have to be cut because there would be no way to raise those funds if you don't have bonding authority to get that. So in this rather unique situation, there's $35,000 from two organizations that are cash available from those organizations, but in securities that aren't liquid yet. And so from one, we have a letter of commitment that says we will transfer these on February whatever, 15th, after it goes. And so the question of the select board is a letter of commitment from an organization as good as cash on hand for reducing the bond amount. And if so, then we would reduce the bond amount today by $15,000 because of the $15,000 from the Friends or from the Historical Society. And then later this month, the Friends will meet to authorize a similar letter, and we can make that $20,000 reduction at deliberative session.
Yeah, people think of that. I mean,
Okay. No, I think that's quite a reasonable approach to this.
The only caveat I would have to that is that we be in agreement that should anything catastrophic happen where the $35,000 does not become realized, that it come off that very bottom line there for furniture, fixtures, and equipment other.
Maybe I'm wrong, but all these things will come due and the cash will be in hand before the vote,
Right.
after the deliberative session.
That's what the letter of commitments would commit to.
Right. Yeah.
right, but we'll have that second letter of before we go into the.
Correct.
And should they not be realized, that it would come off the build budget? Yes?
I hear what you're saying. You're saying that if for some reason the cash were not transferred, but the bond passed,
Correct.
and we couldn't get that,
You
let's
would
say
be willing to reduce the
$15,000,
budget by the
then
30,
it would be
yes.
the responsibility of the project to have to absorb it. And I would be content with that.
I think it's an appropriate approach.
So we would entertain a motion for that, and then we'll focus on putting the bond article on the warrant.
All right, is there a motion to accept?
I move that we tentatively accept the tentative offers that are in CDs with the contingency that if they're not forthcoming, the budget will be modified accordingly.
I would
So
second
we
that.
only have one letter of commitment, so do we want to break that up and say, well.
With a letter of
With a
commitment.
letter of commitment.
Get the second letter before the deliberative session.
Okay.
I would second that.
Yeah, I would second that.
Okay, roll call.
Hardikoff, aye.
Gibson, aye.
And Shrek?
Capiello, online?
Nope.
We unmute
You got to
Jeff.
speak up. Sorry, we just heard the tail end of it.
Oh, Sakosha, no.
Scotia, no.
It does
Okay.
pass 4-1.
So now the vote is on the warrant article as a whole. So again, and this is important. Sorry, go ahead, Dana.
Do we get other public comment?
Oh, yeah, that's a great point. Yeah. So.
If there's anyone else.
Yeah, but I do want to emphasize one point, even before we open the public hearing, and that's the total cost the cost for the library and the bond amount, because those are three numbers that are different. So the total cost, and this number won't change between now and March, is $3,631,324. That is the total raise and appropriate. When you see the warrant article, that will be the first number you see, $3,631,324.
And that will be the library new build out in the
Exactly.
existing building and
300,000 for the
300,000 to be
vacated
sure
space.
that our recreation department can utilize a vacated space.
Right.
Excellent.
So that's where the $3.6
planning.
million is. So 3.3 is the library project. That budget won't change either. You heard from the library trustee chair at 300 for the vacated space to be used by the recreation department. The number that will change, it will change tonight because we just voted to reduce it $15,000, and it will change again very likely at deliberative session in the right direction down, and that's the bond number. So right now, the bond as proposed was $3,319,324. When we get to the point of a motion, after we do the public hearing, that will be $3,304,324 to reflect that $15,000 reduction. And so that number will go down more at deliberative session, but that is the note on the 300,000. So yes.
Okay, open, I'm sorry, did you have something else?
No, no.
Okay. Open to public hearing.
Just waving.
Thank you.
So anyone in the room who has any comment? Please give your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Matt Town. I live in Stillwater Way here in Barrington. Just a couple of comments. One is that I'm a strong supporter of the library project. And in particular for this is a gift from the gods, I think, to have this building that people now can walk around and get a real good sense of what it means to have a legitimate size, or close to a legitimate size. And in that theme, I would encourage the select board as well as the library committees of all sorts to be thinking in terms of opportunity cost, that we focus on keeping the numbers low. But there are times, both in my personal and professional life, where we have spent more in order to buy an opportunity in the future that won't be available if we don't make that decision now. And so even if it adds, $10 or whatever the number is to our, average tax bill for the average home, that is an opportunity that we're giving to our kids, our grandkids, people moving into town. The fact is that Barrington's going to grow, and like it or not, the decisions we make right now will determine what kind of character, what kind of resources are available to our town. And that's what I mean about that opportunity cost. So the TIF district and other things that you folks are considering, I strongly support those because they buy opportunities that we may not be aware of right now. We've had discussions, I've had discussions as part of my role at the Regional Planning Commission about, even the notion of getting resources to study what happens to our septic waste. And, we're chewing up land on a pretty good clip here in Barrington and in a lot of venues, many of which I support. We have to solve that problem as we double, triple, quadruple our town size over the number of years, well past my time here on Earth. The notion here that we have to make those opportunities, that commitment to buying land, to maybe ship to Rochester or to have our own system, we had to make that plan. And that has to happen now versus later. So I applaud the select board for all the work on that, and I fully intend to read as much of that budget proposal as possible. I think it was well constructed. I particularly like the graphs. And that was a meaningful way to sort of add some perspective to that, so I'd encourage that use. So that's my 2 bits.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room? Okay, let's go online.
You can raise your hand if you're in the Teams program. If you're on a phone, you'll have to press *6 to unmute yourself, speak up, wait to be recognized by the chair.
Doesn't look like there's.
I don't see anything.
Madam Chairperson, can I speak as a community?
Sure.
And I did see a hand just go up. We'll grab after Select Person Hardikoff.
So Tracy Hardikoff, 48 Stone Farm Drive, Barrington, New Hampshire. I have to be very honest with you, as the numbers for the library have gone up and down over time as we've explored many of the residents' perspectives. I was really concerned over time over the last two proposals. I have zero concerns about this proposal because we know so much more. Libraries are the one last free space for people to belong, and it is one of the resources and services in every community that levels the playing field for all economic levels. I grew up a telephone lineman's daughter, and I spent every Saturday at my library reading and taking art classes, and absolutely loved my town's library. I would love to see the space available for the kids in this community as the community continues to grow. I'd love to see the resources available as I'm aging, yeah, it's happening, and have those available, and also just to be able to have a sense of community space where there's one more area that we can continue to make Barrington what's so amazing about it, which is that sense of community and coming together. So very enthusiastic about it.
So we'll go to online.
Online, Marcy Novak. You just have to make sure you unmute yourself first.
Hi, live at 73 Birch Lane, and I just want to put in a good word for the new library pending, mostly for the children that really need a place to go after school, but also for us senior citizens. The library is so accommodating now between the stacks, allowing us to have meeting times and playing board games, using the computer, understanding what the computer can do. All these things are just so valuable. And I took my granddaughter to another state, and we were waiting for my niece to come out of work. And there was a library in town. We went in there, and it was lovely. It was a place for children to have a room of their own. And then the teenagers also had a spot. And I just think it would help the Barrington rural feel of community to have this library. And I think with a building that's already existing, it's a pretty great gift. Thank you.
I don't see any other hands up, but I'll give a second if someone wants to put their hand up.
Jim Sakosha.
Hey, Jim Sakosha, 21 James Henry Drive. Just wanted to speak my piece. I think the library has done a great job putting this together. I do want to remind folks that on the agenda also is a community center grant, so to be separate from the library. So there's hope for that as well. I just wanted to make sure you guys knew about that.
All right, thank you, Jim. All right, so we will move on.
So close the public hearing
Close public hearing.
and do a vote.
I move that I don't know exactly how we're going to word this. We approve this warrant article for $3,619,324.
I have the wording if you'd like it, Dan.
It's in the book.
Yeah.
It is.
How about I jump in and you second? Would that be okay?
That's what I meant.
Okay, make a motion to present a $3,631,324 warrant article, including a bond for $3,304,324,000 for a new library to be presented to voters on the 2024 warrant.
That's what I meant.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Are you the second?
Yes, I'll second that.
Okay, roll call.
Hardikoff, aye.
Gibson, aye.
Oh, no, something else. Okay. Roll call vote.
Yes.
Capiello, yes. Sakosha.
Sakosha, no.
Okay. That vote is 4-1. So we will move on.
You have my agenda.
Do you need a TA report?
But she does.
You need a TA report?
I do.
Okay. Can you bring one?
Yeah, I don't know if I didn't pick up my whole packet or
We'll
what,
switch
but
Just like magic, it appears.
Pardon?
The
Yeah.
TA report.
Okay, so we will move on to the community center grant.
Yes. Okay, thank you. So this too will be a bond. This is, as we will learn and discuss, a grant opportunity structured as a forgivable loan. But as a forgivable loan, per the statutes in the state of New Hampshire, it requires bonding authority from the residents. So this will be a bond also, and will require 60% approval from voters. And so this is an opportunity. So the Recreation Director, Jessica Tennis, is available online and will speak to some of the details here. But this is an opportunity that came available of funds to invest in community centers in the state. And it was an opportunity that we couldn't see go by. And so we have applied for this grant with authority from the select board. And this warrant article, and this is probably the most important part of this warrant article, this warrant article is contingent on receiving the grant award. So if residents approve this warrant article and we don't receive the grant, then we will do nothing. And so I think that's really important. So we're looking specifically at 105 Ramsdale Lane. I'll give the Recreation Director a chance to unmute herself and we will talk collectively about this page, which shows the different things that will happen. Because as we just heard about the library bond article, there's $300,000 included in that initiative to make sure that if the library passes and nothing else happens, there are funds available to make the space functional that the library occupies now. So with that in play and this grant in play, there are really 3 options for funding sources and 3 different outcomes which would result. And we want you to understand what those are so you can imagine what supporting the grant proposal, supporting the library would do for the building at 105 Ramsdale Lane. And so Jesse, if you're ready, I've got this up and you can start and I can fill in on what we would do based on the funding sources.
Yeah, so thank you, Connor, for that intro. That's kind of a really kind of overview of what we were looking at. Knowing that this grant application was a one-time opportunity, we decided to kind of go for it, knowing that the library had a couple of wheels in motion. Unfortunately, we don't really know what the outcome of those opportunities are, but with the grant application that we put together, we felt like we were in a really, really good place, and that Barrington was in a good place to be able to be considered to receive that grant. So as Connor kind of alluded to before, there are 3 potential outcomes for that. With each of the potential outcomes, we really tried hard to kind of focus on really getting that indoor programming space. The information that was received through the strategic plan was really just about the fact that we had a lot of facility constraints that only allowed us to have one program at a time, didn't allow us to have any of that multi-generational programming going on. We were very limited to our fitness classes. For any of you who have participated in our yoga classes, they're far from zen when you have the HVAC system kind of buzzing in the background the whole time. So there are definitely improvements that need to be made to the already established infrastructure. So this grant application opportunity really allowed us to kind of encompass all of those into one and come up with the 3 below funding sources or options based off of funding sources.
So an important point that I'll underscore, we mentioned that grant we received for the energy audit, right? This building is 50 years old. This building was built in 1972 or commissioned or opened in 1972. And there are a lot of deficiencies. And unfortunately, this is a building that if we don't invest in, will continue to deteriorate. And this grant opportunity is a way to invest in this and address a lot of the energy audit components through a grant and through investment in this building. And so the 3 options, and I'll pull them up as we go here, but option number 1 is the library passes and the grant is received. So we would have $1.6 million to invest in this building, and there would be vacated space from the library. And so what we would do in that case, and maybe I can stay in full screen mode here, make it a little bit bigger. What we would do in that case is this, excuse me, sorry, it's just the sound gets picked up throughout the room. So what you can see in this floor plan is this is the existing library space, which would be reconfigured for recreation offices and indoor programming space, as you heard from the recreation director, with access down to the existing space, which would be small renovation for program space with the kitchen and multi-generational programming. And so this plan, investing in the existing footprint and renovating the building, addressing the energy audit recommendations, and making this space functional, more functional as a community center where we have options for indoor programming space and maintain the gym area. So that is with the $1.6 million in the library leaves. Another option is that the library does not pass, but we receive the grant. So we would have $1.1 million to invest in the building, but no added space. And so in that case, we would add on to the building. Can you zoom out here? We can't see that whole thing. Let me see if I can get you to see that. That's funny. So let me see if I can still. All right, so on this view, the gray is existing, the gym and the offices are back here. This is the parking lot. So what we would do in this situation is we would add on to the front of the building, which the Recreation Commission actually had plans designed for this during COVID. And then they had to use a lot of the revolving fund money to invest in staff and some interior adjustments to the facility. But this would add on program rooms to the front of the building. And that would address this wall and the energy deficiencies of that wall. That would give a place for residents to come in before walking directly into the gym, have a registration desk, and encounter residents. So that money would be spent on this scope if the library does not leave the building. And then finally, if just the library passes and we don't receive the grant, then we would do minimal adjustments to achieve some scope like this. So having programming space and making this functional. And it's possible that in the future we'd have to seek additional funding from residents to address more of the big picture items in the project. So this warrant article again is contingent on the receipt of the grant. There's a 15% match of $150,000, which is committed from the Recreation Revolving Fund based on user fees from recreation programs, and would be a bond requiring 60% approval. Did I miss anything else, Jesse?
I don't think so. I just wanted to kind of emphasize the spaces that we would be kind of getting would really enhance our programs. With the grant application that we submitted, we had approximately 45 to 50 different program ideas that we had, ranging from services to multi-generational programs, toddler programs, a variety of different things. So by, whether it's up in the current library space or doing the new addition, the space will really be able to enhance what the recreation department currently brings to Barrington. So I just wanted to make sure that I really kind of emphasized what value this is going to bring for us.
Yeah, so if we're able to secure the loan, at what point do we pay off the bond? Are we anticipating 2-3 years?
So it's a refundable loan,
right? So
we wouldn't really pay it off. Once we meet the grant terms, they cancel the loan, right? So they give us the cash.
They do it.
Okay. We make the investment, and then I won't profess that I understand maybe even like 1/10 of federal dollars and restrictions, but one thing that I do understand is that a forgivable loan from a federal grant requirement standpoint is a lot better than a direct cash grant. And that is valuable because as well-intentioned as some of them may be, federal grant requirements can really add a lot of complexity and cost to a project. And this, so there are hurdles with a forgivable. We didn't have a choice, right? So it's not like, hey, we picked this, but the structure of a forgivable loan is a little bit weird. It's weird to me, and I spend a lot of time in grants, but there is a silver lining, and that means that there are fewer I's we have to dot and T's we have to cross to satisfy the requirements of the funding program. Please add to that, Tracy. I know that you've been through many similar experiences.
There's usually less requirements for the amount of time that you have to keep equipment and prove that you've, amortized it properly and yeah, there's a lot to taking federal dollars.
Public hearing, public comment?
Thank you. That was just going to come out of my.
Really, my public comment is really more of a question. And I can sit here in the quiet of this room and look at the graphs and have a pretty good grip on what's going on. How does this get sent out in a way that the general population, with kids, going to school and all the hubbub of, midlife, how do they come to terms with this so that they make an appropriate vote? Something that they understand what's going on. How does that happen?
Yeah, that's a good question. So such a good question that the select board actually dedicated an entirely additional meeting and strategic planning session with the budget committee to that topic on December 12th. And maybe the biggest headline conclusion of that is that there is no silver arrow in the quiver of how do you educate residents on a town meeting vote. But this year more than ever, it's important to try anything and everything and do the best that we can to make the information available to residents, because there will be more than 40 articles on the warrant. And that is a good thing from a citizen government standpoint, because there's a lot of really important decisions that residents get to make. But it's a daunting thing for residents that don't have the time or capacity to research and understand every single one of the items. So a couple of the things that the town will do that we have done previously are a fully detailed voter guide, which has the warrant language and plain text language of what it does, accompanied by a warrant webpage, which we'll be pulling up here in a second, that provides all those details, links to presentations like these and additional backup documentation. Signage, so you already see an important date sign, which points people to where they can find more information. Some of the things that we're evaluating doing different is the select board and budget committee are preparing subjective advocacy statements to accompany the voter guide, to really say, just like somebody would be talking to their neighbor, that, hey, you should support this because, and providing that advocacy. The select board and advisory budget committee will also be available to residents on January 23rd, which is the primary election voting day, to talk to residents about any topic that's on the warrant or anything relative to town business. And so getting out there in front of people who are actually voting, because, it's an election. Some of the other things that we're evaluating is doing like a Facebook Live question and answer on the entire warrant. So an opportunity, so maybe you don't have time to research, but you have a question or two and you want to come on, and being available to that. I'll end with saying that we are open to considering any opportunity that somebody might have for reaching residents or helping to educate residents. We might not be able to do everything because, as we talked about earlier, we are pretty lean operation, which means that there's not a lot of extra time available for doing everything. But the select board dedicated that meeting to weighing the cost and benefit of different education and advocacy opportunities. And so kind of an all over the place answer, but there's kind of all over the place efforts. So.
Do you want to come up?
Diane St. Jean, 68 Small Road. I really like this graphic that I think Jesse created, and I think it's a really helpful thing. But one thing I'd like to see changed on the graphic is where it says library, $300,000. I would like it to say library bond, so that it's clear that the bond has to pass in order for that to be a contribution to the rec. And then maybe this is just a splitting hairs kind of thing, but the green thing that's at the end, that's the total. I'd just like to see that like separated by a little space from the previous arrow-shaped blocks.
That's great feedback. From a designer with your experience, that value, not having to pay for that input is much appreciated.
Thank you.
Hello, Cindy Cafaso, 57 Swain Road. I guess I'm trying to wrap my head around something. It involves the library. Obviously, I am a supporter. If we are trying to get the bond down for the library as low as possible, under 3 million. Why was 300,000 for the rec included when there is a possibility of them getting $1 million? Wouldn't they be able to accomplish what they need to do with that grant? Take our bond, the library bond down to $300,000 and get it a little bit more palatable for the townspeople.
That's a really good question. Definitely. Go ahead, Dan.
If the bond passes, and as we hope it will, something needs to be done with that space, whether we get this grant or anything else, and that do not include that in the cost of moving the library. That was shorting the population of what's really required.
Okay.
So in order to actually accomplish moving the library, we have to do something with that space. And so in order to be transparent about what the cost of this is going to be, we put that $300,000 in there.
So would that, if they were to get the grant as well as that 300, or would that 300 be able to be used somewhere else? Or would it, is the whole 1.4 going to be spent?
Yeah, the proposal in this is to add that to the scope and accomplish more. So that floor plan for the existing library space to be reconfigured for recreation purposes. Don't remember the number off the top of my head, but S&P Architecture put that together, and they put a number on it of $1.2 million. And that did not include the ADA accessible access between the two, just a stairwell. And so that budget of $1.6 million would be just enough to accomplish the scope, the full scope of reconfiguring that space for the function. And so during the initial conversation of the library bond and including funding in the library bond for the recreation space, the grant opportunity wasn't available, it wasn't known, but the conversation was something needs to be included in this so that there aren't two articles dependent on each other, and we don't have a situation where the library passes and we have no funds to do anything with the vacated space and then have to go back to residents the next year and say, hey, provide these funds for us to do that. Once the grant opportunity was presented, that's where the different options and the funding and accomplish varying levels of scope for that building and invest in the building came from. At one point, there was additional funding in the grant article, $500,000 to add to that scope further to do something in the front of the building and the back of the building. And that was pared down through the process by the recommendation of the Advisory Budget Committee and approval by the Select Board.
Okay, thank you.
Would you like to speak from the floor? Because
Thank
of
you, Roger.
mobility issues.
This is just a minor technical. When I look at the document, my math on option one comes out different. 1 million plus 150 plus 300, I think comes to 1,450,000, not 1,650,000.
Fantastic feedback.
Is that correct?
That is correct. It's funny if everything happens and we actually just money grows from thin air. I really like the suggestions from Diane St. Jean and math. We should get that right as well. Thank you.
Still in public comment?
Is there any other public comment online? I don't see anyone's hand up. Is there
Madam Chairperson, can I make a
Yes.
comment? Okay. I may or may, Tracy Hardikoff, 48 Stone Farm Road. I may or may not have the inside scoop on the expected number of housing units that Barrington is about to experience over the next couple of years because of participation in the housing committee or the master plan that will be presented. What I know to be true is that we are a unicorn here in Barrington and we will continue to have growth. We will actually be experiencing about the same amount of growth of the next 2 to 3 years that we've experienced over the last decade. And the world has found out that this amazing, rural, beautiful, community-minded town is the place to be. And if we do not start investing in what the town has for its buildings and planning for some expansion of services, we're going to find ourselves with much larger price tags in the future. And this rec department has jumped through hoops for every household that has a child in need of child care. It has helped to reduce childhood obesity by creating programs for kids. It has helped to keep our elderly mobile, to ensure that there are programs keeping people active. Can't say enough about what our rec department does with next to nothing for money. And having the expansion of that space will simply allow this community to grow as it's going to, but also be able to enhance the services that we're going to be expected to enhance as our population grows.
Thank you. All right, I mean, I think I'm closing public comment. I haven't seen anybody online. All right, public comment is closed.
Sugar.
Oh, is there someone else? We'll certainly take another comment if there is one.
Somebody on the phone?
Oh, okay, so maybe they weren't on mute. Okay, so, is there someone who would like to make a motion?
I move that we present a warrant article for $1,150,000, including a $1 million refundable loan for community center improvements to the voters on the 2024 warrant.
All right, roll call.
Do you need a second on that, Madam Chairperson?
I think we do, thank you.
I would second that.
Option.
Roll call.
Hardikoff, aye.
Gibson, aye.
Mandrake, aye.
Capello, aye. And Selectman Sakosha online?
Scotia,
Okay, this passes 5-0. So moving along to the Barrington Commons and Town Center Tax Increment Financing District. Connor, I'll turn it over to you for some background.
Yes. Okay, so the first and most important item is that there are some components about tax increment financing and the vision and the plan that are confusing. And that's unfortunate because it makes it difficult in a short window of time to explain all the details, but all the details are available at barrington.nh.gov/TIF, which of course stands for Tax Increment Financing. And this presentation, copy of this presentation, a copy of the development program and financing plan are available at that address, along with frequently asked questions and other details. So this is not a new idea. The select board approached the tax increment financing district as a funding mechanism in the 2023 warrant. And that proposal asked voters to establish a quite large district that was had goals that were pretty broad and far-reaching, and that was proposed to exist for a pretty long time. And that article failed with a positive vote of 45.5%. And not unsurprisingly, residents said that it was too big and too abstract and was existing for too long. And so the select board discussed in the early days after the town meeting vote how to digest that information, and there wasn't a lot of energy or interest in immediately reevaluating it. And then in June, an opportunity came about, which we'll talk about in a second, which forced the select board to say, let's look at this opportunity and discuss this in detail. So this was a big topic of the select board's June strategic planning session. And so the opportunity that came about around that time is there's a 13-acre lot in the center of Barrington between the elementary school, Knight's Garage, the post office, and Kale's Country Store. If you don't know it's there, you might not know it's there because it doesn't have much visibility. It has frontage and it kind of touches the different roads, but it's just a vacant lot in between a lot of where things are going on. We'll see a map in a second. That lot went on the market. There hasn't been a lot of commercial interest because it doesn't have much visibility. And if you're going to spend a premium for a piece of property in the middle of a town, you kind of want to be seen. And so that opportunity caused the select board to think maybe this is a way to have a specific plan to do something and establish a town center, which again, we'll talk more about in a second. But At a high level, this plan is different than last year's plan in 3 key ways. And so it's smaller. This is 1/3 of the size of what was proposed last year. It's more specific. There's a plan to buy the lot, establish the Barrington Commons, and make some specific town center improvements. And lastly, and almost most importantly, it's shorter. It's proposed at 8 years instead of 20. And so this is a very short-term investment in the town center to achieve some of the vision, which we'll talk about, and then revert everything back to quote unquote normal. So what is the town center? The town center is a zoning district. It's shown in yellow there on the map that's on the screen, surrounded by the purple, which is the village district. Zoning districts are land use, are regions with specific land use. And you establish land use rules, residents do, to accomplish certain objectives. And in the town center, those objectives were to have a place for residents to gather and businesses to thrive. It has a little bit higher density residential development allowed. It encourages commercial development. And the idea was a place that is an established, downtown isn't the right word, but a quaint town center where residents can gather and connect with each other and patronize businesses. And so that town center was the result of a lot of processes, right? So geographically, it's around the intersection of Route 9 and 125. The big picture goal is to try to maintain some of Barrington's rural character, consolidate some mixed use development with a lot of civic use and open space. In 2003, there was a master plan update. These are links and also in that tax increment financing district website that talked about this. In 2007, there was a visioning, which really honed in this idea, listening to residents and hearing what residents wanted to see. In 2008, the zoning district was established, and that's kind of a vote of approval, right? Last year, there was a question from a resident that said, how do you know residents want this? And I said, well, there have been a lot of public sessions and people have said that this is the vision that they kind of identify with. And this resident's concern was that that's just a small portion of the residents and not reflective of all the residents. And I mean, it's a valid point, right? You know, we might do a survey and 300 people might respond and we have 9,500 residents. Now, my toddlers aren't responding to those, but there's a lot of adults, more than 500 to 300 adults. So 2008 is important because that's every registered voter in Barrington voting and saying we're adopting this vision by establishing this zoning district. And so that's a key point in the in this process. And that zoning has been updated with small changes, but reaffirmed by voters consistently. So now we're looking at implementing this vision for the town center. And so this is from back in 2007. And I share this only to show that not a whole lot has changed. You know, residents have said that they want walkability, they want to get off the road, they want a town green, they want, you know, resident or commercial development mixed with civic uses. And so this is the updated plan. And this is, very importantly, this is a conceptual, and we'll look at a zoomed in version of this in a minute. But what this shows is that we have a lot, this 13-acre lot that's proposed to become the Barrington Commons, which is primarily developed for recreation purposes. And we'll talk about those details, and the recreation director will chime in and talk about how that accomplishes some of the strategic planning of that department. But what the town buying this does is create redevelopment potential for adjacent lots that currently are developed to the maximum extent possible for septic loading and well capacity, but have the most prime frontage on Route 125. This also establishes additional improvements that promote walkability and safe access for residents once they get to the town center. This plan includes school zones on Route 125 in the vicinity of the elementary school and Route 9 in the vicinity of the middle school. Crosswalk across Route 9 in the vicinity of Community Way. So this plan starts to give an idea of what the updated vision, what's able to be accomplished with the updated vision of the town center. Like I said, we'll look at it again in a minute. So residents have said that they want gathering and recreation space like trails and gazebos and a town green and a pavilion. They want transportation upgrades like school zones and frontage roads or gateways, sidewalks, crosswalks. And they want quaint commercial development, retail, cafe, restaurants, etc. And that's really the guiding principles in balancing that civic use with the commercial development in this area. So we have a plan, we know what we're trying to accomplish, and we need to find a way to make it happen. And so 1988, the residents of Barrington adopted the provisions that allow the establishment of tax increment financing districts. 2007 was the town center plan. That vision was updated in 2014 with the community profile. 2019, a lot of participation in the recreation strategic plan and needs assessment. Various updates to the master plan, various changes to zoning and a zoning map. All of these plans reference this town center investment. And the missing piece has been the town's investment in that area. And one of the biggest reasons that that's been a missing piece is because it costs money to invest in an area and invest in the future. And it's difficult when Barrington obviously has a culture of being lean and having small municipal tax rate and all the rest. It's difficult to take big bites at the apple and say, we're going to invest in the future in this way. And that's where the tax increment financing comes from, which we'll talk about in a second. But the specific plan in buying this lot is to establish a Barrington Commons. And so the Barrington Commons is 13 acres, is the proposed focal point of the town center. Currently, it's a 13-acre vacant lot. It's proposed to be developed as a public park. And importantly, it preserves the redevelopment potential for adjacent real estate. We'll show here what else this Barrington Commons lot could be. And the specific details of these plans don't matter, but I pulled out some of the details. So in 2022, there was a proposal to establish an elder care campus on this lot. And that elder care campus included 62 assisted living units and 32 residential units. The reception from Barrington residents was, it would be great to have assisted living in Barrington. I'd love to be able to age out in Barrington. And that had some support from the planning board from a conceptual standpoint. The tough part is this lot and in the town center isn't zoned for that level of density. And from a tax-based standpoint, it's very possible that this development could be a nonprofit model and pay no property taxes. And so we have the kind of dense residential development that residents have expressed concern with. It's in one of the most prime pieces of real estate geographically in town, and it maximizes the development potential of this lot and minimizes the redevelopment potential of adjacent lots. So the owners have been marketing this lot since the last year, and in their marketing materials, they include this graphic, which is a development proposal, which shows 5 commercial buildings and 91 residential units. And this is, again, maximizing the development potential of this lot. And so there haven't been any additional plans to develop this lot. There haven't been a lot of commercial interest in buying the lot, in part likely because there isn't a lot of visibility from Route 9 or Route 125. And when you have a piece of real estate like this, if you don't have visibility, even your proximity to an intersection means that your development really has to be a destination and not something that somebody drives by and, oh, I'm going to pull in and patronize this business or visit this commercial entity. And so the understanding what it could be and how it could be developed is important to understand why the select board, in evaluating the opportunity, said this is a good opportunity for us to invest in the town center, give opportunity for redevelopment of adjacent lots, and establish this Barrington Commons and a place for residents in the town center, help preserve some of that Barrington character. And so the tool, how do we accomplish this without raising taxes? So this is where things get a little bit complicated and a little bit technical. I'll try to keep it as simple as possible, but it's public hearing, and the benefit of a public hearing is question and answer. So happy to address questions about this. What tax increment financing is a temporary economic development tool. Temporary, as you know, we talked about, was 8 years. It's a funding tool for making improvements or investments like civic use public facilities or transportation. It helps us achieve that vision of the town center, and it's used in municipalities across the state. What it does is it takes new tax value and reinvests it in the district. And so that new development, for example, would be the units across the street from the middle school, right? So there's new development happening there. There's tax base being created where there wasn't previously. And so if this is approved, now some of that is already on the tax rolls, and so that wouldn't be eligible for captured value. But the new development that happens in this geographic area is captured, and nobody pays more taxes. Nobody's property rights change, but temporarily we reinvest all of the additional tax dollars into the district to accomplish certain goals. And so it allows us to establish and maintain community space without increasing taxes. It allows development partnerships to realize the broader goals. And importantly, voters are in charge. So the without increasing taxes is important because technically, if you don't set this portion of additional value aside and reinvest it, it would go to the tax base. And if it goes to the tax base, that would have a negative impact on the tax rate, right? The tax rate would go down because the tax base is bigger. And so the decision that residents are tasked with is, are these goals, is this vision worth temporarily setting aside a portion of new value for 8 years and investing those dollars in the town center? And then you take this after 8 years and put it all back on the tax rolls, and all the taxes go the same places they do now, 74% to the school, 16% to the town, and 10% to the county. And voters being in charge is critical because voters can cancel the tax increment financing district if they're unsatisfied with the progress or the results, or they can extend it if it's working and they want to see that model continued. So what does it not do? And this is critically important. It does not change zoning. It has nothing to do with land use regulations and doesn't change what you can or can't do inside or outside the district. It doesn't change property rights. It doesn't change somebody's availability to develop their lot or not develop their lot inside or outside the district. It doesn't increase taxes. Whether you live in the district or own property in the district or outside the district, you're paying the same in taxes. What is different is where the taxes go. The taxes on new development are set aside and available for the tax increment financing. The taxes that you're already paying continue to go to the same places. Nobody loses money. The town, school, county don't lose the tax base that already exists. It's just the new tax base, which is temporarily set aside. It doesn't create any special fees or assessments, and it doesn't decrease funding to the school or the county. So we're talking about is the Barrington Commons, which is that 13-acre lot to be developed as a public park, and the town center tax increment financing district. This is something that the select board and planning board have discussed, and as part of the plan to achieve the vision for the town center, and this is the financial tool to do so. There were meetings with residents inside and outside the district, business owners in the district, department heads, boards, committees, commissions, to hone in on what the vision is and how the best way to accomplish it is. One of the reasons this part of the process was really important this year is because there are 40 articles on the warrant. And this is not, nobody at this table, I think, could tell you with a straight face that this is a critical need for the town. But what it is an option to accomplish what residents have said that they'd like to see. And it is our duty to give residents that option. We don't choose for them. We don't get to decide. Residents get to decide if this is a good idea and they want to do this or not. And it's our duty to give them that choice. And in developing this plan, the select board has felt, and we feel that this is the best way to accomplish this goal, this vision at this time. And it's opportunity driven, right? This lot is on the market. If this lot is purchased and developed commercially, and this same opportunity won't exist in the future. And so fine-tuning this approach with feedback from the budget committee and residents and business owners has been important. So the result is a development program and financing plan, which is a lot of statutory jargon about how what it will do and how it will be accomplished, but an important piece of the overall proposal. So this is the map. Like I said, it's a third of the size of what was proposed last year. It really just encompasses the area from the middle school to the east and to the almost to the cemetery in the west. Up to the north, it goes about to the veterinary clinic, and to the south, it goes to the elementary school. And so that area is the area where new value will be captured and reinvested within that same area. So it was important to extend out to the schools so we can use some of the funds to establish school zones. It was important to capture some of the development that's underway so that value can be reinvested. The 40 units across the street from the middle school, the 80 units behind the Irving, and there's a variety of vacant property within the district that would be, that may generate incremental taxes, which could be reinvested as well. So specifically, this district is 79 parcels, 484 acres. It has a baseline value of $90 million. It's temporary, it would expire in 8 years. There's no bond, there's no debt that's proposed as part of this proposal, and it's designed around that reoccurring vision of the Barrington Town Center. So I'm going to step out of the PowerPoint presentation for just a second. This lists what kind of improvements are being considered, but fortunately we have kind of a better graphic to show you for this, which I'll pull up. And Jesse, if you want to start unmuting yourself. So let's zoom in. Full screen mode. Go one more. Too much. Okay. So I'll start here. This area is the large portion of that 13 acres. And what you'll see is potential. This isn't the plan. This would happen over the 8 years in an order advised by residents. But this shows developing this lot for recreational and leisure purposes. And so this approach in accomplishing these pieces of the vision is really driven by what residents have told the Recreation Department through strategic planning and the Planning Board through master plan chapter updates, and is summarized here. So I'll turn it over to Jesse to address some of the big picture goals that we would be looking to accomplish in establishing the Barrington Commons.
Right, thank you, Connor. So as Connor had briefly mentioned, there have been a number of strategic planning methods that have kind of taken place over a number of years. Those have been done through recreation, land use, conservation, and even more departments. Consistently, the town center has always been kind of listed as a top priority, actually identified in verbatim from the needs assessment strategic plan. It says that improving recreational services has been viewed as a need for a very long time, but has never been made a priority for funding. So with that being said, I think that this opportunity allows us to kind of take that step in the right direction and allow us to kind of earmark this property for what the residents truly want, allow us to kind of utilize those 8 years to get to whatever that vision that the community is looking for. Really trying to kind of create that central location for the self-guided leisure. Also within that space would be some recreational programming as well, but really just trying to focus on that space for people to be able to kind of go grab a sandwich at Caleb's, utilize a park pavilion, and enjoy that sandwich while their kids are playing on the playground, etc. And then the purpose of the TIF district will allow Barrington to attain the above plans over the course of the next 8 years. As Connor had mentioned, these are just kind of preliminary ideas based off of the strategic plans and the responses that have been given to us. But some of the, do you want me to go over the key takeaways, Connor?
When you get there.
Okay. Sorry, my screen was showing that. So through those things, we just kind of have identified on the bottom, there's kind of 7 different pictures that kind of give samples of what we were looking for. So encompassed within this property, we're looking at some multi-use courts, could be a combination of basketball, pickleball, tennis, a playground of varying ages. So we would probably be similar to the community playground, where there would be, the 5 and under side and then the 5 and older side. Some sort of disc golf or walking path that is flat and accessible for all people, but also making sure that it is, somewhat rural, but also feels comfortable for people to be able to walk and know that they're at least around the people in case there was an emergency. Establishing pavilions for people to be able to, like I kind of mentioned, grabbing a sandwich, enjoying a picnic with their family. We've also had some ideas about doing like birthday party rentals or, you know, family reunions, those type of things at those pavilions. So there's a couple of different utilizations that we could utilize those for. One of our rec commissioners is very, very passionate about a pump track. And there's been a lot of discussion about, you know, bike connectivity and making sure that kids have a safe place to ride, but also have that connectivity to those places that they're trying to get to. So creating a pump track for people to do biking. If it's a paved one, we could even do some sort of rollerblading, roller skating, scooters, those type of things. The picture in the splash pad is the one in Newmarket, just because I felt like that was probably the most realistic for what Barrington would get. And that would be on like the higher end. So there's some water features that are similar to what is in Dover. I can't remember the name of the park itself, but there's a variety of splash pad options, but really trying to address the lack of water access here in Barrington. And then the last one is the community park pavilion. It's a big ticket item, but it is an amazing opportunity. The picture that is in that is displayed is the Waterhouse Pavilion that is in Kennebunk, Maine. So if you're looking for any sort of additional information on that, I would definitely look into that. But that pavilion is a refrigerated floor, so it allows them to utilize it for ice skating during the winter time. So they do a variety of different type of skating things, and then in the summertime they utilize it for pickleball, they utilize it for farmers markets, a variety of different community events. So those were some of the things that we just kind of touched on with this flyer.
So to the point about key takeaways, just briefly, this, again, this is opportunity driven. This isn't identified as the town's most important need, but this is an opportunity and one of the last remaining parcels in the area, in the center of town, that we could accomplish something like this with. I'll show another graphic in a second and talk in more detail about the redevelopment potential. But all of the proposed development would happen through advice from residents, through an established advisory board to the select board. This wouldn't all happen at once. This would happen in a phased approach with resident input. There's long overdue safety updates such as the crosswalks and the school zones that we would be able to accomplish with this plan. This would help maintain some of the character and rural feel, give a place for residents for the self-guided leisure, expand the program opportunities in the recreation department, multi-generational usage, and I guess the emphasis on community feedback is essential. This plan is being presented to residents because we have heard that residents want to see something like this vision accomplished. And so just as every step of the process, we seek feedback from residents at public hearings like this and other meetings, if established, this process, the feedback loop wouldn't end, and getting residents involved either through the advisory board or other mechanisms would be essential to make sure that we're accomplishing the vision that residents have asked for. I will pull up this plan will be okay to talk about it with. So adjacent, just to the east of this lot is the Knights Garage property, a Barrington staple, and 2 lots of pretty good size with a tremendous amount of frontage on Route 125. Maybe some of the most desirable property in Barrington from a real estate perspective, with all the frontage on Route 125 and at the signaled intersection. One of the challenges with those lots as they exist now is that they have achieved essentially the maximum development potential of those lots. And there is limited redevelopment potential. And the reason is largely due to the types of development and the availability for additional septic loading and well capacity. And so on those lots alone, it would be challenging, and in some cases impossible, depending on the type of development, to redevelop those lots into different uses than what they're using now. And so it's not surprising, as a result of those facts, that the property sold and is continuing to be used for the same uses, which is great. It's a great service to the town of Barrington. If this 13-acre lot were developed to the maximum potential, as you saw in some of the plans earlier, there would be much more limited opportunity for any redevelopment of that real estate with the frontage on 125. And so part of the plan in developing for recreation and open space purposes, a lot like this, is the opportunity to sell or license or provide easements to abutting property for redevelopment. Property that has the potential to be more valuable and more successful from a commercial or retail standpoint. And so that value might not be realized for 10, 20, or even more years, but the point is investing in that opportunity now creates that potential. One other example I'll give is just south of the Knights property is a restaurant, it used to be Frank Jones, and there's constraints with that lot similar due to the availability of septic loading. And it's difficult for that lot on its own without additional real estate nearby to have a new septic system that might accommodate a commercial dishwasher and other things that a restaurant might want. And so whether it's this lot or working with other adjacent property owners, providing more value to the commercial lots in town that exist and won't go anywhere. These lots with frontage aren't disappearing, but creating redevelopment potential for those is a big part of the purpose. And that goal, accomplishing that goal, is expanding the tax base. I just want to close the loop on this, and I've got to pull up. Jim, I saw you put your hand up. Did you want to add something in, or were you just getting in line for the end?
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna go over pretty much just shorten up, a lot of the key points. I just want to make sure are clear to those.
Please go ahead, because what I have here is just the warrant article language and then the question slide. So please speak up.
Okay, so biggest thing here, it's a funding mechanism. We're not asking the taxpayers to take any extra money and put it towards this. This is going to be something that funds itself. As Jesse had mentioned, there's plans so that, we're not going to be putting, our own dollars in. 35 years ago, I was born in '88, and 35 years ago, I landed here in Barrington. And this field has been here since I've been a kid. We played football on it. We've rode our bikes on it. We played baseball at Calif's Field. We've gotten sandwiches after, and really get to live a nice childhood here because you knew where all the kids were with the pile of bikes outside of Calif's. Making the lots functional around it, as Connor touched on. For instance, the old Jenny's Ice Cream way back, but most recently Frank Jones, they have issues with their setbacks, with their septic and whatnot. And nobody in town wants a building that can't be serving the people of the town, right? I do feel that there is a need for more sit-in restaurants, whether it's breakfast, lunch, or dinner. As our community is growing, so isn't the hunger. This is the only opportunity, just for those listening, for the town to have a parcel in the quote unquote center of town. I think it's important if residents want Barrington to remain its character and not have a Dollar General go in or something or whatnot. But now's the time to do this. I'm very passionate about it. I believe I helped start this. And I just want to see Barrington keep going in the right direction. And for those watching this, just because you see those preliminary prints doesn't mean that it's set in stone. You're going to have a say like everybody does when they show up to vote.
Thank you.
That's great.
So let's open it up for public comment. I see some comment here in the room.
Roger Gingrich, 32 Peabody Way, wanting to know what traffic studies suggest Route 9 and Route 25 crossing there is a hellish place to be most parts of the day. And if you add a public facility to this place, what are the thoughts about the streets? Not what's there, but the streets and so forth to handle the traffic. Thanks.
Yeah, it's an excellent question, and one of the reasons that so Barrington Commons being the park and then Town Center being the broader area, investing in the Town Center is essential because there are problems that exist today that are only going to get worse even if we do nothing. And the tax increment financing as a financial tool to invest in those problems, whether it's be researching solutions or even funding some of the solutions, is essential. How that would work in practice, one perfect example is that the town has identified that pedestrian access along that section of Route 9 or even across Route 9 or Route 125 is dangerous. And through the state Department of Transportation's 10-year plan, the state has funding set aside, $750,000 or more, to make improvements in that area to address pedestrian access across and pedestrian safety. And so those types of partnerships where the town invests money, whether it be designing or even funding a portion of and working with the state to make those transportation improvements, is essential. It needs to happen whether we make investments in Barrington Commons or a public park or not. The challenge is, where does that money come from? As a financial tool, the tax increment financing gives us that. Now, specific to what additional impacts establishing a park there would create, certainly if you give people a reason to visit the town center, you will be increasing any traffic or pedestrian impacts. The zoning is established so that people go to the town center. And so whether we do the Barrington Commons investment in that park or not, it's a problem we need to solve. Having the park gives us real estate to help solve that problem, whether it be access, along the post office, or right now it's the freight delivery access point for Kayla's Country Store. But those are the frontage points of this lot where the town could invest and develop access to provide pedestrian access and improved vehicular access for the property. There are nuanced changes that could be made in that area that would help improve vehicle and pedestrian safety. And we'll get into a lot of the details because these are a piece of private property owner, but pieces of private property, and it would be their decision to make. But we've had conversations with folks about moving or changing their parking with help from the town and this lot to make Route 9 safer. We've had conversations with property owners about relocating buildings that are close to the road and make sight distance challenging. All of those things cost money, but would make dramatic improvements to the safety of the area, given the existing traffic or any future traffic. So those are the type of transportation improvements that we talk about with investing the tax increment financing funding on to address the current problems and certainly any future problems that would come from attracting people to the area. So I hope that helps.
Is there anyone else online? Doesn't look like.
I would like to add that we would definitely harvest the natural resources that are there, whether it's trees, and we were also told that there's a good gravel soil area there.
All right, thank you. So Connor's going to take us through the terms of the letter of intent, and we had some feedback from residents at our December select board meeting, and so we were able to take those concerns and revisit our negotiations.
Right, and the feedback loop that we talk about is critically important, right? Because if we're doing something for residents, but residents say, hey, you missed the mark, we need to listen and we need to adapt an approach to reflect that. And so the warrant article isn't to buy the 13 acres. The warrant article is to establish a funding mechanism in order to buy it. The town is in negotiations with the property owner to get under agreement to buy the lot if the tax increment financing passes. So what the select board has and is linked to the town administrator report and available online is a final draft of a letter of intent. And very importantly, the changes of this letter of intent from a previous version are there's no non-refundable deposit prior to town meeting. And so there is no money on the line for residents if they vote no. It's truly the residents' decision to make, and this letter of intent reflects the importance of that decision and not basing that decision on, do we lose $25,000 as a non-refundable deposit, or do we move forward with this tax increment financing district? Secondly, there's a requirement that the town and the seller commission and present an appraisal as two opinions of value as the basis to finalize the purchase price. So it's been on the market for $1.2 million. The current proposed purchase price is $935,000, which is certainly less than it has been on the market for. But I think fine tuning that price based on appraised value will be important. And so that process will later in February. But those are the two major changes. The rest of the details, which haven't changed, but for folks that didn't participate in the last conversation or didn't watch the last meeting, the structure is an installment payment to buy the property. And so that's important because the tax increment revenue comes in installments as people pay their taxes, as there's additional value. And so the property owner would maintain the deed for the property until the town pays for it through the installments. There would be a 4.59% interest on that outstanding balance for the first 4 years, and then going up to just under 7% after that. The town would make 2 payments a year in August and December. After the first year, there would be minimum payments of $150,000, and it would be purchased in full no later than 2031. It's subject to the availability of tax increment financing funds. If for some reason the town can't meet one of the minimum payments, the town would have until the next April in order to fund the remaining purchase. So that could be a warrant article, it could be a grant, it could be selling a portion of the lot or licensing a portion of the lot. The contingencies, of course, are town meeting approval, the appraisal, and successfully negotiating a purchase price. And if in the event of the town misses a payment, is in default, the town has the opportunity to purchase, and if the town chooses not to purchase, then we can take any improvements we've made off the property and leave the property to the seller at that point. So this, the question of the select board is to approve this letter of intent to be signed and presented to the seller. And then we would move into negotiating the terms of a purchase and sale, which would be based on these terms.
I don't know if there's any discussion. I think we've had much of this discussion already. The improvements or the changes that mentioned were things that were talked about at our last meeting. I would move that we send this non-binding letter of intent to purchase.
As presented.
Whatever, as presented, purchase and sales agreement.
I'll second.
Begin drafting a purchase and sales agreement.
Okay, so we have a proposal and a second. Roll call.
Hardikoff, aye.
Gibson, aye.
Manchurk, aye.
Capello, aye.
Sakosha, aye.
Okay, so this passes 5-0. We do have another motion here, which is to present the Barrington Commons and Town Center Tax Increment Financing District to voters on the 2024 warrant.
I move that we present the Barrington Commons and Town Center Tax Incremental Financing District to voter in the 2024.
I just quickly wanted to make comment, Madam Chairperson. So one of the things that we learned at the 5-day training that we took through New Hampshire Municipal Association, we were presented tax incremental financing success projects. Prior to that education for me, I did not know the details of what tax incremental financing can achieve and how it would impact residents. I understand it's a complex financing matrix, but I also understand that It's an excellent way for the future growth and the future residents to help provide for the build out of infrastructure in a town that already exists instead of current residents taking it on. And we heard from a resident probably 3 meetings ago who suggested just that. And that's why I think it will be easy to support this. So I would second your motion.
Okay, roll call.
Hardikoff, aye.
Gibson, aye.
Mantrick, aye.
Capello, aye.
Sikorsky, aye.
Okay. That move also passes 5-0. Let's move on to item F, 2024 proposed warrant finalizations.
Great, so we have one quick decision, and then we're going to be going through and making our recommendation votes, which hopefully can be done in collective for most of the warrant articles. So in your packet, you had the tax rate impact. It was at the beginning of your packet, and I can pull it up here if that would be helpful for the conversation. For anybody following along at home, it was linked to the town administrator report, and it's also available in the budget binder. Navigating to here. So there are 2 documents that are important here. The overall tax rate impact from the entire warrant. This assumes that everything passes, which it may or may not, but for the purposes of estimating what the total tax rate impact would be, the estimate is that everything passes, and the total tax rate impact would be 37 cents. So this takes into account things like revenue, which we know are important. Takes into account things like fund balance, which contributions are also important, war service credits, the operating budget, et cetera. So the next page, and this is in your packet, is the impact by warrant article. And so if we look at these warrant articles listed here and ignore option 1 and option 2 for a second, you'll see all the financial components of the warrant articles and the total change in appropriation. And the decision the select board has to make is how to utilize the unassigned fund balance as it relates to the tax rate impact. What we did prior to last year was simply fund warrant articles from unassigned fund balance and list them on the warrant with no tax rate impact. Those articles frequently passed, and the advisory budget committee and others advised that that was not as transparent as it could be, because unassigned fund balance is taxes that were previously raised, either through property taxes in the operating budget or revenue collected in excess of projections. And so last year, the select board heeded that advice and said, we will list a tax rate impact on all of the warrant articles, and we will use unassigned fund balance at tax rate setting to reduce the tax rate. And if we go back to this one, we can see that the select board did that. The select board used $747,000 at tax rate setting to reduce the tax rate. And it did indeed reduce the tax rate. And the problem that we learned from that process, doing it for the first time last year, is that the tax rate impacts that we present to residents doing it that way are artificially inflated. And I demonstrate that here with option 1, looking at the 2024 warrant. So if we did it the same way and talk just about the tax rate impact of the individual warrant article and forget the anticipated utilization of unassigned fund balance, we see that the total tax rate impact, if everything passes, is 73 cents, not 37, and a total of $310 on the average home, the tax bill of an average home. And the reason that's problematic is because it's wrong. And that isn't what the tax rate impact would be if everything passes. And so consistency is important in government, and keeping residents familiar with the process and what we're doing is also important. But maybe more important than that is being accurate. And so we worked on a way to make the tax rate impacts accurate and utilize the unassigned fund balance. And so the proposal in option 2 is, instead of funding entire articles from unassigned fund balance, the proposal is to fund half of each of the financial articles, right? So 25 through 36 from unassigned fund balance, and the other half will be funded from the tax rate. And what this does is it puts the utilization of unassigned fund balance in the hands of the residents in a warrant article, instead of the hands of the select board at tax rate setting. That's important because we are able to commit to using it to residents. When residents vote in March, if we tell them that the select board is going to use it in October or November at tax rate setting, we can't guarantee that that will happen. That's up to the select board at that time. If we put it in the warrant article, we can we can show them that it will happen because it's their choice that it happens. Anyways, if you look at option 2, of course, the operating budget tax rate impact doesn't change because unassigned fund balance can't be used for that. But for each of the warrant articles, you can see that the tax rate impact is much less. Totals 37 cents, which we saw on the previous page, is the tax rate impact, and only $157 instead of $310. And so it's different than we did it last year. This advisory budget committee discussed it at length and recommended by a vote of 4-1 that the select board do option 2. The one dissenting vote, what that member would have preferred to see, and one of the reasons he voted no, is because he wanted to see the first 4 or the first 5 warrant articles be fully funded, because those are the top priorities, and the others not be funded at all. And the reason he wasn't able to convince others of that idea is because that wasn't equitable. It was kind of making decisions for voters. And so I think the reason why there is a dissenting vote is important, and that's why. So that's the recommendation. It's my recommendation. If the select board votes to do option 2, the warrant articles will be restructured to include half funding from unassigned fund balance. The select board would still have the opportunity in October or November to use any additional surplus unassigned fund balance, or use any fund balance from articles that failed to buy down the tax rate further, so the impact could be less than 37 cents. But the residents get the choice for each individual warrant article. Happy to answer questions.
I mean, at the last meeting when we were discussing this, I thought it was too soon to change, just because we changed it last year and now we would change it again. But seeing the figures lined up like this, it seems like this is the way to present the information.
Very transparent for voters. It's their budget.
More transparent.
Yeah, I think it's very transparent for voters, for sure.
So,
We want to make that motion?
All in favor, or move? Make unassigned fund balance utilization consistent with option 2. 50% of each article, 25 through 36, is funded through unassigned fund balance. The remaining 50% funded from property taxes.
Second.
roll call.
Hardikoff, aye.
Gibson, aye.
Nanchuk, aye.
Capiello, aye. Jim
Sakosha,
Sicuro.
aye. Sakosha, aye.
Okay, I didn't hear it. Thanks. Okay. Did we do
We might
public
want-
comment on this?
No, so we're, this isn't a public hearing
On that, right.
on that. There actually isn't a required public hearing on the total warrant, although we can certainly do one before we close out on all of the votes. But now what we're looking at is making recommendation votes on all of the warrant articles. So we had public hearings on some of them, but obviously there are many more warrant articles, mostly capital reserve contributions, but some other important ones like community power aggregation and the transfer station recycling center revolving fund and the fire ambulance revolving fund, depositing 100% of the revenue into that account. And so the select board needs to make recommendation votes on each of these articles. You'll see a superscript 1 for each article that it's proposed that the advisory budget committee will take a recommendation vote on tomorrow. I would say that you could probably bundle any of them that aren't going to be unanimous vote. So it's possible that you could just ask members to call out any article that they expect to vote no on, so that all the rest could be voted on together in the interest of time. But if you wanted to open a public hearing, probably now would be the best time, and just say any comment on any additional warrant article on the ballot.
Yeah, I would like to open public meetings, or first off, anyone in the room that would like to make a comment on any of the warrant articles. Doesn't look like it. How about online? Doesn't look like that either. Okay, we'll close public comment. So select board, I think just in the
Interest of time?
yes.
Yeah.
So could we identify if there are articles where you're anticipating voting no on? And we can talk about those. Okay. Any for you, Rob? Gannon, any for
Nope.
you? And Jim, any for you?
Yeah, I'm not in favor of the library bond. I'm not sure what the operations, because I mean, we're in charge of the operating budget, and not having the operating cost or rough amount coming to ask the voters on, hey, we want a building, but we don't know how much it's going to be to maintain or even have a guesstimate together to see what the impact is and to hire more individuals to clean when we have an issue with our fire safety building and have an issue of keeping or retaining employees and not having enough employees already. It's just asking a lot, in my opinion.
So for these warrant articles, we'll be looking specifically at the library technology capital reserve
No,
of
I
a
think he's talking
3,000.
about the bond.
I think he's talking about the
Article
number
number
Bond,
one.
but, oh, number one, certainly.
In response to that, because I always appreciate that there are 5 voices providing information, am I to understand that although the 2023 budget was 423,000, that there is $55,000 unexpended for the library?
Yes.
Okay.
They had a vacancy in the director position and other census changes that contributed to that.
Okay. I guess my thoughts are, I respect select person Sakosha's perspective, but I can't really anticipate that adding 10 or 20 hours of janitorial work or expanding the space twice over, would that amount to more than 25,000 in operating expenses?
I don't think the janitorial will know. I think it will be important, and I suggested this to the library trustee chair and the foundation president. The library trustee chair, library trustees worked on a answer document to questions, operating cost questions posed by one of the advisory budget committee members. And it was a very comprehensive document which addressed all of the anticipated costs, whether they anticipated them in the beginning or later on. And so that information exists with those materials. I think it's important to, like I suggested, to keep those materials with all of the rest, because it's important to understand that there will be additional future operating costs of the building. It's an additional parking lot to plow. It's a bigger building to clean. It's more for the facility manager to do. And that, yes, so I think the direct cost for custodial wouldn't be more than that. But there are additional costs, and they're summarized well in that document.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, other discussion on Article 21.
I would suggest that if we don't pass this library bond this year, that in certainly many of our lifetimes, we probably will not. That the library said that this is their last, or the foundation said this is their last shot. Maybe the last best opportunity to get a library in this community.
And I understand some
So-
of the funding had some requirements that the Barrington Foundation raised, that if the library didn't pass this time, they needed to return
Their money.
So with that, I would make a motion to exclude Article 21, but that to take Article 22 through 42, and that each of us would recommend that for approval and presentation to the voters on the 2024 warrant. That would be my motion.
Second,
Okay, roll call.
Hardikoff, aye.
Gibson, aye.
Aaron aye.
Capello, aye. Jim?
Sakosha, aye.
All right, so those all pass.
And then individually, I would make a motion that Article 21 be recommended for approval and presentation to voters on the 2024 warrant.
Second,
Okay, roll call.
Hardikoff, aye.
Gibson, aye.
Aaron aye.
Capello, aye.
Sakosha, aye.
Did you say Sakosha aye?
He did.
Sakosha, aye. Sorry, my audio must not be good.
That, that was on the library bond recommendation?
Yes.
Okay, so the select board is unanimous in its recommendations of Articles 21 to 42.
Great.
Okay. Moving along, we have issuance of a building permit on Longshore Drive. It's a private road. We do need to vote on this. It's a category 3, so these applicants are going to do the work and pay for that road improvement section as part of the policy.
Right. Proposing to meet the policy recommended by the planning board.
Yep, make a motion to authorize the issuance of
Public
building.
comment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Is there any public comment for the building permit on Longshore Drive for Carlos and Natasha Repro map 104 lot 96? Doesn't look like there's any in the room. Is there any comment online? Looks like not. Okay, we can go ahead and make a motion.
Make a motion to authorize the issuance of a building permit for map 104, lot 96 on Longshore Drive as presented.
Second.
Roll call.
Hardikoff, aye.
Aye.
Manshirk, aye.
Capello, aye.
Sakosha,
Right. Consent agenda. So I wasn't here when you discussed it. Is there anything that
No
got pulled off?
changes.
No.
Okay, so we can make a motion to approve the January 8th, 2024 consent agenda A through J as presented.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I'd second that.
All right, roll call.
Hardikoff, aye.
Gibson, aye.
Manshirk, aye.
Capello, aye.
Sakosha,
Great.
Andy
Number
Loving.
7 is appointments. What is this?
That's, oh, we agreed to that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay, we did agree to that. Appointments, staff,
None.
okay. Staff report,
I have January work anniversaries. First meeting in January here, Tyler Rand has been with the fire department for 15 years, Cody Guile for 7 years. Is currently one of the full-time employees. Amy Doherty, our finance administrator, was first hired in Barrington 5 years ago this month. Aaron O'Day, recreation administrative assistant, was hired in Barrington 4 years ago this month. And Jim Anderson, our working facilities manager, was hired this time last year. Appreciate the tenure of those employees, and that's all I have.
so congratulations to those staff. Municipal Officer Administrator Cottle, do you have anything?
The request for signature for 3 approved minutes from the consent agenda, as well as the proposed collective bargaining agreement. It's
Yeah, I
right
think it's
there.
been signed.
If you have the ability to initial each page, that would be
As
fantastic.
chair,
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you very much. That's it.
Just you or everyone?
just the chair.
The chair.
Ooh, you're off the hook. There's a lot of pages.
Yeah, I haven't seen this before.
Number 9, old business, the transfer station fee and schedule changes.
Okay, you'll remember from the budget development presentation that there is funds for expanded hours in the transfer station. The Transfer Station Recycling Center Review Committee evaluated the best way to do that, and they're proposing that the year-round hours for Thursday should be 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. So this would be a change from the Thursday hours that happen in the summer right now, which is 12 to noon, 12 to 1, 12, no,
2 to
1 to
1 to 4:30, 1 to 4.
1 to 5.
1 to 5.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you. Here it is, 9:15. Okay.
We're a little punchy at this time of night.
So the proposal is to move Thursday hours to the morning. And the conversation, as I understand it, that happened from the committee is we have evening hours available during the week. And this would be creating morning hours available during the week. On Saturday, we have morning and afternoon hours available all day. And so the proposal, as recommended by the Transfer Station Committee, is to have morning hours on Thursday to create better opportunities for residents to use the facility. The second proposal encompassed within the recommendation is the fee schedule. Part of the warrant is establishing a transfer station and recycling center revolving fund, which would put revenues in excess of $225,000 in a separate fund for the availability of cost increases expected in 2027. And that plan depends on increasing fees. And so the select board authorized that plan and asked the committee to propose rate increases that would accomplish about a 20% increase in fee revenue. And they have proposed that. You have a copy of the fees. Primarily, it's a trash bag increase, $20 for a bag of large bags and $15 for a bag of small bags. along with bulky waste increases and some of the contractor bags and others. So the proposal is to approve the schedule change contingent on town meeting vote to start on, wait, I thought it said when I was gonna start.
January 9th, right?
No, that's for the
User fees.
user fees. Aaron, when was the schedule of Thursdays going to start?
We discussed that it would happen in April. That first week, April 4th would be the first Thursday.
Okay, so April 4th, to go into effect April 4th. So for discussion.
I'm all for working towards that change in fee increases. The question that I have is, what data are we using to come up with changing Thursday's hours from nighttime to 8 to 12?
Fresh.
We have 48% of Barringtonites that leave our town to go to work. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. The rationale for doing that was that afternoons are difficult for everyone, that perhaps mornings as an alternative to do it in the morning on Thursday. The rationale.
I would think if you were opening up at 6 a.m. and people could drop off trash on their way to work, that would work. I don't see how opening 8 to 12 without studying this is a wise idea. It certainly makes it easier to find employees because staying till 6 at night is difficult. I don't think it will be utilized, and I've seen multiple residents report on Facebook postings that they would actually prefer we stay open till 7, that they rush to get home from work, grab their recyclables, grab their trash, and get to the transfer station. So I'm not sure without studying this that we should comfortably support this.
Couple points on that. First, the evening hours wouldn't change. So the Tuesday evening hours, so Tuesday is when we're open until 6. I don't disagree that it would be a good idea to evaluate staying open until 7 on Tuesdays, but the hours on Thursdays right now are just 1 to 5. And so for folks that leave town to work, one
barrier is there, is what
same
I'm hearing.
barrier.
Okay.
And so there isn't a proposal to, with the Thursday hours, go outside of the typical working schedule. But the idea is we already have hours on the second half of a working day. Not everybody works a traditional shift. We already have hours on the second half of a working day, which go until 6, but I'm hearing that at least one select board member wants the committee to consider what it would take to get those to 7. But make availability during the working day, but on the first half of the day. To your point about data, the Transfer Station Recycling Center Review Committee, one of the first things that they did was a survey for residents. There was an online survey, and they stood at the transfer station and collected raw data from residents in that way. And ours was a part of that survey, and the committee reviewed those survey results in preparing this recommendation. And so that proposal, that question was pretty open-ended, the hours question, but it talked about when residents wanted to see hours of availability for the facility, and it also talked about if the residents were interested in paying for additional hours at the facility. And so the committee did review data. It was a couple years old, but the committee did review data in making a recommendation.
Okay.
Other discussion? Does anyone want to make a motion?
I move that we accept the Transfer Station Advisory Committee's advice. I don't know, I can't always do that.
Yeah, no, I know.
Support the recommendation of the Transfer Recycling Center Committee. Set year-round Thursday hours, 8 to noon, contingent on budget approval, and approve the proposed user fee changes effective 8 January or 9 January, tomorrow.
I would definitely like to see numbers after a year so that we're studying the data.
I think that's reasonable.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. So I would second that.
Okay, roll call.
Hardikoff, aye.
Nantrick, aye.
Capello, aye. Jim?
Okay.
Okay, so that is moved and passed, but we have a request that they collect data and get back to us in a year
Yes,
about the success of the time change.
great.
New business.
Old Garrison Road discontinuance. So
Okay.
now, I did ever expect when I joined the select board that I'd be looking at documents from the 1700s and the 1800s. I hope you had fun with this.
I did not.
First of all, let's apologize for making him wait
Right.
3 hours. Why didn't we move this to the beginning of the meeting?
This is a good civics lesson.
That when you
But you
start
don't
the
even live
meeting,
in
you
this
ask, is
town.
there a chance the select board would move? Yeah.
We're required to do it.
Real quick by way of introduction. So you have the materials, you have the request. Chris Berry is here to speak to those requests. The question about abandonment, the statutorily town meeting has to decide on abandoning any road. There's question of whether this is even a town road, but out of abundance of caution, the request is to have it abandoned. There's two ways to get a warrant on a warrant article. One is sponsored by the select board and one is petitioned. The request right now is that the select board sponsor a warrant article to abandon this old road to the Garrison as part of the development that's happening in order to satisfy the Department of Transportation that it won't be developed with an additional curb cut in close proximity to the driveway. So the reason the select board's looking at it is because there's two ways to put an article on the warrant, one sponsored by the select board, one petition. The deadline for the select board to sponsor a warrant article is today. The deadline for a petition warrant article is tomorrow. And so, Chris, feel free to give some details, or if the select board has questions, I know you've reviewed your packet.
The history was fascinating.
So members, my name is Christopher Berry. I'm with Berry Surveying and Engineering, and I represent one of the landowners that this affects. There's an old road that leads to the Garrison that happens to be on my client's property. We have a subdivision approval that's pending before the planning board that this old road sort of migrates through our parcel into others. And the research that I provided you was our effort to determine whether or not this road was really a town road or not a town road, and whether or not it had formerly been abandoned or not. And what we found is that we don't know. And it's very frustrating as part of our profession when we find answers like don't know. But I was able to research just about every other town road that exists, where it starts, why it was created, its width, its lineage, history, and the progression of the civilization of Barrington through town, while trying to determine whether or not this road was a town road or not. And the closest I found is that when the road that was laid out, which is now Brewster Road, Smoke Street, and Kate Road, when that was laid out, it went by this quote-unquote old road. And it was likely the road that settlers took to the Garrison from the center of town, but may or may not have ever been laid out as an actual road. So I'd like the board to indulge me in sponsoring a warrant article that would discontinue or abandon this roadway, in that it may be a road and it may not be a road. And what this would allow us to do is satisfy the Department of Transportation. The road transects 3 parcels of land, ours and 2 others. All 3 parcels of land have frontage on Route 9. It's not used for access. And the one person that does utilize our property to gain access to their property, we've already agreed to grant them an easement to do so.
Is the Garrison still there?
The foundation of the Garrison is still there, yes. Yep.
Where is that on this map?
I'd have to see.
I'm assuming the 9.44 acres is your client.
Yes.
Okay.
Right here is
So there's the Garrison, and then the deed for the 9.44 acres, the 1.85 acres, and the 0.97 acres. Do any of those deeds indicate in those deeds whether this road crosses their property?
We have a deed from 1902
1902. Okay.
that states that the road actually resides on our property.
Okay.
And
Have
the
you,
Kent
Yep.
and the Kent parcel has a deed from the same time period
which states their land goes up to the edge of the roadway.
That's the 1.85 acres.
That's correct.
So their deed is also from 1902.
Well, from
Okay.
that same time period.
Okay,
My
and
memory's a
and
little
so, interesting, so so there's probably, what, 20% of their land that's actually on the other side of that roadway.
So that, it was a result of a lot line revision that was done with the Kent land and my client's land, formerly owned by the Haley family. And so the road is actually on the Kent property as it goes in behind their house and behind their barn.
Okay, and the lot line revision was to give them
Area,
bigger area.
bigger area and area around their barn.
Okay, and then have you researched the deed on the 0.97 acres?
Yes, ma'am.
And does that deed indicate that there's a road running through it?
There does not, no. And in fact, their deed calls for the land beyond the road, as if the road is included in their parcel.
Interesting. Okay. Do we legally have the right to impact those deeds? So they're filed and they're legal, and if we present
Those rights wouldn't change.
Okay.
So the town meeting would not be forfeiting rights of private property owners.
Okay.
The town meeting would be forfeiting the rights of the general public to use that road or have access to that road. And I think the important part of this research is it isn't conclusive that the town residents have rights to it anyways, but the problem is because it's shown, it's bounded by stone walls. I mean, you know, when you come up by the church there, as you're coming along Route 9, just as you start to turn left, you can see a road that kind of goes straight, like a path through the woods. That's the road. The Department of Transportation is concerned that if that is a town road, or whoever has rights to it, if it could be developed, it touches Route 9 in close proximity to the church driveway, to the proposed driveway here, and they want to make sure that nothing's ever done with it. And so whether the town has rights to it or not, discontinuance is the most definitive way that Chris Berry and his client would like to see that the town demonstrate to the Department of Transportation that the town isn't going to execute any interest in it in the future.
And we're just deciding whether to place a warrant article for that.
Whether the select board is going to sponsor warrant article for it.
Or whether a citizen will do it.
Okay.
My question would be, are those other two properties, have they been consulted?
They haven't been consulted on whether or not the road is abandoned, no.
I don't.
So they'll still have access to the road, but not public,
That's right.
the general public.
Or they'll have access as described in their deed. It sounds like one of the deeds maybe references it, that it's, I don't know, but
I read they use it for septic.
it won't change the rights that the property owners have to the road.
That's right. We're not asking to take anybody's rights away other than the general public.
Other than everybody's.
Other than everybody except those three.
Which quite frankly, based on the deeds, you wouldn't be able to utilize it anyway.
Theoretically.
At one time, the Garrison would have been town-owned, right? And then at some point, it became private?
The Garrison was always privately owned by the Cade family.
Most of them were.
Yeah.
And certain people volunteered to build garrisons.
Right.
That's where everyone was supposed to go in case Penacooks decided to do something, get back their land, for example, or take back their slaves, or.
That we stole. Yeah, I got you. Okay.
So, I mean, I just think we still have Tracy's question, but could you also explain your proposal on the alternative?
Yeah, so I really think this is a good idea. But
I thought it was clever also.
Yeah, I think the timing is the biggest issue. So what I proposed, and Chris was quickly agreeable to, is that his client could give the town an easement to the town, that if the town was ever going to do anything with this old Garrison Road, which we know is unlikely because we might not even have rights to it, we would do it over the driveway. So basically just get an easement from the driveway into the old road and then let that be the end of it. And for the Department of Transportation, reasonably, that would be enough assurance to them that if if the town was ever gonna do anything with that road, it would happen from this driveway at a perpendicular
Fabulous, that sounds
intersection.
brilliant. How do we do that?
So that's still in progress. The problem is the timeline. So I talked to the Department of Transportation on Thursday, and proposed the idea. He said, yep, sounds reasonable. We'll take a look at it, have Chris send something. And Chris sent something on Thursday or the same day, I think. And they were pinged today and it was, hey, look, we're going to look at it. It's just not going to be like right this second. And I think part of the problem is they're busy and these projects take forever. And I think like this project in particular, I think that there was like a really long period of time while all of the research was being done. And so it's kind of like in the queue. And I tried to articulate that their queue, expediting their queue for would an easement work would help us not have to have another warrant article on a warrant that has 40 articles, and that those efforts were unsuccessful.
Okay, so could the warrant article then read to provide abandonment to the old road to the Garrison with the understanding that property owner for 234-25.1 would provide easement?
If we're going to have a warrant article, we might as well just do an abandonment altogether. I mean, if you're going to support an abandonment warrant article, just do the whole thing and forget the easement. An alternative would be that between now and deliberative session, Department of Transportation says an easement's fine, and at deliberative session, we just change the language of the warrant article to be more vague. Or Chris's client and Chris would probably still articulate that it would be good to have it be abandonment. This is my concern. This is a concern that I have. The residents of this town are kind of funny about giving up rights to roads.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And the best example is Long Marsh Road, where it was a petitioned warrant article because the select board wouldn't sponsor it to not even give up the rights, but just to reduce the classification of Long Marsh Road, which is surrounded by 1,400 acres of Stonehouse Forest, and residents voted it down. And so I think having the easement option as an option is a good idea. It's important to Chris and his client to have another option because you don't know what, the Department of Transportation hasn't determined yet what is good enough for them. I'm a little bit concerned that whether it's sponsored by the select board or petitioned, residents might not support it for the same reasons they didn't support the other one. I mean, I don't think the select board's probably going to go out and do a whole big advocacy effort to educate residents and promote.
So you prefer to go through the easement?
Well,
yeah, but the timing's wrong, right?
If they say no, if the voters say no, then by that time, maybe the queue will have reached it and they'll say that the easement is okay, we do that and we're golden. But if they don't pass the warrant, whether you provide the warrant or we provide the warrant, if the voters reject it, then it's rejected. And we'll have to worry about it some other way or some other time.
Right.
And there were some other reasons that the Long Marsh was declined. I feel
Right.
like there was different extenuating circumstances as opposed to this that runs over 3 private lots adjacent to Route 9.
Right.
The thought with the other one was that we were giving up rights for any potential roadway that we would want to put in connecting. Anyway.
Oh, no question. I mean, I don't know, Chris, in your research, how many abandonments did you find?
Oh, many.
Oh, okay. There was more recently, or longer ago than the Long Marsh Road, there was this whole conversation at town meeting well, they were going to abandon roads, and then they ended up, and I don't know if I forget how long ago it was, if Rick was involved or not, but they ultimately decided to designate the roads as greenways. This is like Wildcat Road from where it touches Union Lake Road over to Young Road and others. I'm like, what the heck is a green? This is a greenway. But it was like they were so committed to not changing the classification or giving up the rights that they just called it something that doesn't exist in order to like keep the rights. So I don't know. Time will tell.
In the late 80s, early 90s, there was a big effort to
Clean up
and abandon roadways.
Yeah.
A lot of widening and straightening took place at the same time.
Okay.
Okay. the question of the select board is to sponsor a warrant article. If the select board doesn't sponsor a warrant article, it's likely that it would be a petitioned article.
Well, I mean, again, if it's the voters' decision, put it before them, and then if the easement comes through, that's another option, isn't it?
Well, the warrant
Oh,
article is going to be on the warrant no
pass.
matter what. If the select board puts it on the warrant or a petitioner puts it on the warrant, it's on the warrant. There's no way to take it off, even if the easement comes through.
Okay.
Right, so that, I guess our decision
that
is,
muddies
do
it
we
then.
want to do it, or are we asking the petitioner to do it? I know, I don't really
It's gonna
have
be
an
there.
opinion.
It's gonna be warrant 44, I think, isn't it? Yours is gonna be 43, probably.
43?
44. What the hell?
Yeah, I don't strong feelings one. Does anyone?
I really don't. So in the absence of strong feelings, let's put it before the voters.
It's
So
gonna
you-
get put.
Yeah, it's
I
gonna-
move that we put a warrant article to abandon Garrison Road.
Okay.
And the details of where it is.
Second.
All right, roll call.
Hardikoff, aye.
Gibson, aye.
Insurance guy.
Gabriella, aye. And Jim.
Sakosha, aye.
Okay,
Easement comes through, we can just change the wording at the deliberative session. to-
Yes.
well, you probably, why, you wouldn't
Why
want
bother?
to.
You're not gonna, I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not your warrant article at this
I
point, but
prefer that there be an easement.
in the event the warrant failed, are you still
Well,
pursuing the easement approach?
So
well, but
that's
here's the
backup.
thing, if the article passes and we get the easement, it's an easement to nowhere, because we don't have any road there anymore.
That's a valid point.
So
Why
if,
bother?
this is what I would recommend.
Okay.
You've decided to put an article on the warrant. Let that process proceed to March 12th. Hopefully between now and then, we'll have an answer from the Department of Transportation on whether or not an easement is good enough. I would not recommend doing anything with the easement until after town meeting vote. If town meeting votes no, then we do the easement, assuming that's satisfactory to the Department of Transportation. If town meeting votes yes, then we don't do anything. We don't accept an easement to nowhere. Okay, but now now you need to take a recommendation vote on that article.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Hardikoff,
Yes.
yes.
Gibson, aye.
Insurance.
Yes.
The article, just in
Sakosha, yes.
transparency, would say to see if the town will vote to discontinue any rights the public may have in a right of way which runs over the parcels of land identified as, et cetera, et cetera. And we could add in that article that this road has never been developed and although it is not clear that the public has any rights in this right of way, the discontinuance is necessary to ensure it will never be developed.
Perfect.
Thank you. Enjoy your night.
Was that worth,
Thanks.
was that worth waiting for?
I mean, he doesn't have to.
No, you don't have to answer that. That's not a
All right,
requirement.
agenda 11.
Common answers, I get paid by the hour.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, no.
Oh, boy. Okay, have a good night.
Select board member reports and concerns.
We had a reschedule of the Housing Master Plan Community Housing Survey results due to an illness. We had a zoning board where we denied an extension of a driveway across the way here, requiring that the potential for mixed-use buildings come in off of Route 125 curb cut. So that the children, well, part of the facts presented was that it would be safer for the residents back here and for the community children that are taking the bus from that area. And for neighbors picking up their mail right off of Signature Drive, which is almost directly across from there. So the builder will be going to DOT for a curb cut towards the end of the property down there. I think those are the only things I have to present.
Energy Committee met last week, and it was in preparation for the warrant and preparations for that.
Right, and I think you told me that community power would come in below the new Eversource rate, which is pretty low.
Yeah, Community Power did come out with a rate that is below Eversource, so if the voters do support it, it would the path would be open to join, so.
You heard the transfer station report, library report. ABC meets tomorrow to approve or disapprove. School board met last Tuesday. They had their budget hearing for a $73,360 increase of 5.5% over last year's budget. But interestingly, and this is fairly cool, they touted and spent most of their time talking about it only being 2.98% above their default budget. So if you don't vote for this, it's only an increase, or if you vote for it, it's a 2.98% increase over what you'll pay if you do the default budget. If we did the same, I just calculated roughly, ours would be a 2.1% increase over the default budget. How curious is that? Their deliberative session is the 10th of February at 9 o'clock. 10th of February. Ours is the 3rd and theirs is the 10th.
Let's see, planning board, the big meeting is tomorrow night, and that will be public hearing on the proposed zoning amendments for the upcoming warrant. And Young Road subdivision will be on the agenda, so there's some new reports on that. And the Coots Farm proposed subdivision will be back for a second discussion, and that's the one that has over 600 acres, and they're proposing somewhere around 175 units and a 400-acre conservation. So that will be of great interest to voters. And Jim?
Yeah, so technology committee is still plugging forward and doing what they do. Nothing really new there. The Class 6 private roads committee still need to finalize some things. Still waiting on that. And then rec is in full swing with basketball and programming. And a used to be called the enrichment program when I was a kid, and 2 weeks. You know, I think we get to go a couple times, but we get to go up to Gunstock. So their ski program is close to 100 participants, which is really cool to see that that's still going on. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. I'm really sick tonight, but that's all I got for you guys.
Okay.
I have a couple of questions. For the Energy Committee, there was a question about having a table for the presidential primary in January. Did we go through Ron St. Jean for that?
Yes.
Okay, and then one other question was, you know, they have an information handout about community power. If we were to make copies of that for handouts at that table, is that informational or advocacy? Is there an issue with?
Is it this one?
We'll get you the revised
Okay.
one, but it's similar.
I'll
to
just
that
let the
2-page.
attorney make a determination.
Okay.
And just keep it clean that way.
Perfect, thanks.
Okay. Could you describe to us what your expectations of select board members are on the?
Yes. Well, what we discussed at our strategic planning session is that the members of the select board and advisory budget committee would be available at tables for residents to discuss any of the topics on the warrant. Answer questions, educate people. Hey, here are the things most important to me. Hey, here are the things I'm most excited about. Hey, if you're going to vote yes for 3 articles, vote yes for these ones. And that is, that's the expectation. That was what was discussed. That I think is the plan. We haven't done it before, so it's not really clear exactly how it will go. I will be there. There will certainly be questions that are objective and factual in nature, and you know, I think having good resources is important. We'll have computers there so we can pull information up. We'll have printed materials, like there'll be a version of the voter guide available then, a printed copy. We can have some available. And so, yeah, happy, you know, to make any changes or fine tune anything based on recommendations.
Presumably, we also are responsible for this election, so we have to be there anyway. Is that correct? Presidential primary?
You have to sign off on.
That topic has been one of a lot of conversation. So the select board, the state statute is clear for local elections. Not as clear for other elections. For the local elections, the town was noted by the Secretary of State's office for not having a quorum of the select board available at the time that they were there. We implemented a plan to have memberships available.
Yes, not just a representative, but.
So I think it has traditionally been requested that the select board be at all of the elections and work at all of the elections. I shared when I was asked this time that the select board plans to be available to residents in this capacity and, you know, participating in the civic process of educating voters about the upcoming warrant. And so long and the short of it is, I think they would, they being election organizers, would welcome any and all assistance in working the elections. But I think the select board has identified as a higher priority than that to be available to residents at an informational table. So if you're available to be there all day, spend some time at the informational table and participate in election working at other times, I'm sure that would be welcome.
Could we ask Joyce to assign so we make sure that someone's there the whole time?
Because I know I can only come in the afternoon. And I can only come in. Oh, well, perfect. Okay.
Yes,
So
and I've
so
heard
I
back.
don't mean like I have like a.
I'm a great morning guy.
What?
I'm a great morning guy.
Okay, so we have
I've
two
got
for the morning?
8 to 10:30 that I can definitely be available at the table, but three littles on.
I'll make whatever. I tend to stay till the end, so.
So might be easier for you to come in the afternoon.
Tracy and Joyce, I think, sound like they volunteered to do, she's gonna do all afternoon and Tracy's gonna do all morning. Is that the way I heard it?
Dan has an appointment, so I'm in
2.5
Boston,
hours
so
in
I
the
might not
morning.
get back until 1 or 2. So keep that in mind.
I'm just want to be
But then
clear
I'm
on
fine
something.
after that.
Is this the first report out where they wanted three select board members at all times over the course of an 11-hour day?
Well, not the presidential, right?
Just the local election.
I will send you the report. There's a great summary. My computer died, but in response to these questions previously, I put together all of the relevant information and sent it to the select board. It's in a report. I'll send it to you. It'll be at the top of your inbox. The problem is the statutory language. Actually, I think is it constitutional? There are a lot of components. I think there's a section in the Constitution that says, and it talks about the select board presence at the election. The problem is the select board, one select board member isn't the select board. And so the interpretation is that the select board is only a quorum of the select board. The nuanced part of it, and this will all be in the report that I send you. The nuanced part of it is it makes clear in the statute and in the election manuals that the select board and or the moderator can appoint a select person pro tem in their place.
Right.
And so what we've done after the Secretary of State said, you know, hey, you don't have a quorum of the board here, is we've just had a schedule where we say, okay, when are select board members available? We fill out that schedule, and then we put in the schedule pro tem appointments of people that are there.
Correct.
That are there anyway.
Yeah.
And so meeting the constitutional and statutory requirements is not a heavy lift. I think as our elections get bigger and more complex and there are fewer volunteers, it is always helpful to have people work the elections. And to that end, if you know anybody that's looking to work elections, send them to the moderator, the town clerk, we'll get them signed up.
And what are people paid to do that?
We just increased it.
We are actually paying people.
We've always paid people. Yep.
Is it like $15?
It's like $10,
$10
$15 an
or
hour.
15?
Constitution also requires an adequate education of children.
What has the court said about that?
Okay.
So
Okay.
I will get you that information.
Mhm.
It's not hard to meet the requirements, but they're always looking for people to work the elections.
Understood.
All right, should we move on to our second public comment? Anyone in this room have public comment?
Anyone online have public comment?
Oh, could I make public comment? Do I have to go stand over there? Well, just,
If it's your personal opinion, yes. I would say if it's your personal opinion,
well, I
yes.
could have given a personal opinion.
Okay.
Yeah, as far as the recording is concerned, Dan Mantrek, 353 Scruton Pond. Rick's petition, I think, was well presented. I think it's a really worthwhile thing. So if you haven't signed it, I would recommend you sign both petitions. So I think it will be a good start. I've been trying for 3 years to get some sort of connection between the school board and the select board with practically no success. And I think this may be a really good idea and have the voters tell the school board that we need to get this done. So thank you, Rick, and Scott
Thanks
also.
for pointing that out. I didn't know those were over.
Yeah.
You missed it because he presented, but there are 2 petitions. You have to sign both.
My concern only, and I have to ask Connor this, why did it separate in the first place?
Yeah, my understanding, so it's an advisory committee, so there's no responsibility to have, there's no requirement to have an advisory budget committee. There's something that happened in Barrington. My understanding is at the time, the members of the committee were appointed by the select board. All of the members of the committee were appointed by the select board. And I don't know if there was ever a conversation of, hey, there should be, shared appointments to the committee. But that seemed to be a large contributing factor to the school saying, hey, we want to appoint the members of our budget committee.
And that took place in what year?
I can get you an answer to that.
Okay.
The other thing
I was really hesitant to jump into this okay.
I would point out too that this is advisory. But I think it's a really good advice to do.
I really like the concept. Does the advisory budget for the school board produce or work the same amount of time?
They do not.
All right, so I was just wondering, when you combine them, is this too much of an ask for volunteers to do both, or does it seem reasonable? Has any of the existing members expressed an interest like that seems feasible, or?
My understanding.
You're gonna have to, sorry, just nobody's gonna hear you if you're.
My understanding is that the budget committee for the school gets their information after the school, and the school board and the administrators have all put all the stuff together. It's all done deal, and then they hand it to them and say 7 or 10 days to come back with any recommendations. And ironically, after the meeting was over, I had a conversation with one of the school board members, and he made it perfectly clear to me that they don't like that. They don't like the idea of having questions asked.
The only questions I've ever heard them ask are $10, $15 changes and things, maybe $100 changes.
I just, Connor was right. It was 8 or 9 or 10 years ago when the school came back, and rightfully so. They had no say in who sat on the budget committee. The selectmen appointed the budget committee and said, look at 2 budgets. And so the school's a separate government came back and said, well, time out. We're going to have our own budget committee. So, and that's the way it's been for a while. So that's where I have made overtures the last few years about that. And so I just felt at this point that it made sense to go to the voters and have an equal representation and get this done. And another thing that's very frustrating to me is that the town and the school are working on doing things to try to save a couple of dollars. I spent 3 years on the school board, and I said it at the meeting. There's not a lot of places to cut in the school budget, much like the town budget. you start cutting people. Teachers cost money. I support paying good teachers good money. I really do. High school tuition is expensive. But transportation's expensive. Special ed needs are expensive. So when you really break it down in that $30 million budget, there's really the piece of the pie that you have any real control over is the maintenance of the buildings and the energy costs and that stuff, which you don't have a lot. So, but I don't, I saw some of the things that, I worked with the facilities manager at the school and the road agent and the selectman had the support and stuff a few years ago. And we were doing things back and forth that was actually saving the town a few bucks.
Oh, with some of the agreements.
And that is non-existent today.
Mm-hmm.
The schools doing their own thing, the town's doing their own thing. I'm not gonna get into it tonight. There's blame on both sides of the table. And I said it at the school meeting, and I'll say it right here to you folks. It wasn't all the school, it wasn't all the town. There was some egos got in the way, and that whole deal is non-existent right now. And so this is part of an attempt on my part to, I want to see a joint budget committee so that we can primarily look at the big picture. And I'm about 99.9% sure that I'm going to run for school board because I do want to see this through, and I do want to see. I want to see the town and the school get back to working on ways, collaborating on ways to ultimately save the taxpayers a little bit of money, but more importantly, more efficiency on both sides. And I think that there's a few people that I've talked to that are interested in forming a subcommittee to that would be their primary task, is to say, how can we, what can we do here? I'm personally a huge proponent of taking all the winter maintenance. The road agent will probably hate me if he's listening right now, but I'm a huge proponent of all winter maintenance being put over to the road agent 100%. And that the road agent says, look, you're going to do this, you do this, you do this, and working together to make sure that the schools are plowed, the roads are plowed. Might it ultimately mean that we have to hire more people? Yep. But I firmly believe that you could take all of that, bring it over to the road agent so he could turn around and say, well, when you're done plowing the school, you go and do this and utilize the people more efficiently. And from a taxpayer's perspective is, yes, maybe the highway department budget goes up a little bit, but money is removed or shown on the school side that hey, we're not putting any money into maintenance because we're only doing it in one place, if that makes sense. I'm looking at, again.
Holds a shared services committee to evaluate opportunities for the town and school to collaborate where we can save costs. The school's a big organization. The school gets good electricity rates because they use a lot of electricity. If we buy electricity together, we could save money. Previously, the school used the town's fuel. We didn't charge them for it. They just used it, but it's good. We maintain the facility. We don't have to pay gas tax on that fuel. We have salt at the highway department. Grounds maintenance, right? How many lawnmowers do we need in town, and weed whackers and leaf blowers, and facility needs, right? Custodial. So the big picture, part of the big picture goal is reestablishing shared services so that even if it's not a lot of money, we're just doing things as efficiently as possible for the residents.
We owe it. As a fire chief, one of the things that I do is I want to look at every single taxpayer, including those of you that sit in this room right here, look you in the face and saying, you've given me X number of dollars to run a department, and I'm doing the best I can with that money and not wasting that money, and that's important to me. And that's what I want, whether it's the select board or the school board, to be able to look at every single taxpayer and say, look, I may not save you $1 million, but I'm utilizing the money you give us in a prudent fashion and getting the best bang we can for a buck. It's frustrating to me that because of some of the things that have gone on, that the school went out and got gas cards, and the gas credit cards are for the most expensive gas station in town. And again, at the grand scheme of things, am I talking about saving enough money to reduce our tax rate? No, but I don't think that's a wise way, that's a wise use of our tax dollars when they were getting fuel at the highway garage, in which we as taxpayers were paying, and we're not paying the tax on it, and now they're using that credit card at we have 2 gas stations in town, and anybody that goes by and sees the sign, one of them's a little bit more expensive than the other, and that's where they buy their fuel. And that's frustrating to Rick Walker. And so I just think that it's time for all of us to hike up our, and get back to working together. I mean, maybe some of the ideas I have will never work, and that's okay. But we should at least explore them and have an understanding of why it won't work.
There would not be control over when the budget process, like, I guess I hear you and I respect what you're saying. However, their board would still have the leeway to decide how they go about their budget process. We go about it in a very detailed manner with tremendous review of every single line item. I don't think that can be forced upon another board, and that would be my concern.
Yeah, so the warrant articles are advisory, plain and simple. There's no legally binding component of these petition warrant articles. Okay. Plain and simple. Rick will tell you that. The approach is to say, hey, give residents the choice, and if residents say you should do this, hey, it'd be a pretty bad look if you didn't do it. Like, you ought to do it. In practice, what I would anticipate is if this passes and the select board says we intend to honor this warrant article and the school board says we intend to honor this warrant article, that in April, members of the combined budget committee are appointed, and in May, they start meeting to establish the framework for a process. To say, this is the process we'd like to go through. We want budgets by September 15th. We want budgets and budget binders by September 15th. We'll meet on XX date. You know,
But you're leaving it to the residents to decide.
Yeah.
Ultimately making that piece of it, again, the voters' budget, the voters' process.
I think it could optimize the select board process, which, whether this goes or not, I might still recommend this to the select board. You know, we have our department head budget presentations at the select board meeting. We really aren't doing any budget review then. It's really just kind of an update from the department head about their budget. The budget committee, and we've had department heads come to the budget committee meetings now, and they get into detail. They talk about everything. I think we could do away with the department head budget presentations to the select board altogether. Let that happen at the budget committee standpoint. Maybe in place of that, and maybe even a different time of the year, we bring in department heads to give updates and, you know, have that kind of FaceTime with the community and the select board, because that's very important. But as far as, we got a lot going on during budget season. That doesn't need to happen then. if we have a combined budget committee, let all those presentations happen at the budget committee and let the budget committee present that to the select board and the school board. Which, like I said, even if this doesn't happen, I might recommend the select board consider that process change for next year.
Wouldn't it make more sense then to have 3, 3, and 1, so there were 7 people on that committee? I mean, we have some pretty brilliant people on our advisory budget committee that do an excellent job digging into details. But I'm wondering, from the school board perspective, really allowing them to make because they have a body of 3 right now, don't they?
Oh,
3.
On their budget committee?
Hmm?
They struggle, and they struggle to get people to do it, and it's.
I'm wondering if 3, 3, and 1 makes more sense.
I think
There's
that
a
could be
lot
something
to
the
look
school
at.
board and select board could evaluate if the article passes. I mean, certainly it would be well within the select board and school board's right to say, we don't like 2, 2, and 1, we're gonna do 3, 3, and 1.
But again, I think the main thing, and I think Rick really has it down pat, is we're gonna go to the public, the community, and say, this is the way we think it should work, and the community is gonna say that. The details, we can work out.
And why does it have to be petitioned? Why can't it be presented through the select board? Did we miss some timeline?
No, the select board warrant article, it still could be. It still could be a
Happened tonight.
select board sponsored warrant article. I think, in my opinion, it would be in poor taste because it's not binding. The select board doesn't need a warrant article to do that.
Okay.
I think the point of it being a petitioned warrant article is that it is not binding and it's just a directive to the select board. I think what the select board could do, if the select board liked it, is sign the article and vote to recommend it and speak publicly about it.
Okay.
Can we put a vote on a petition warrant?
Absolutely.
The other thing too, I think coming as a petition warrant article, it doesn't sound like select board has decided we want this done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for turning everything over to our residents and voters. I mean, that's the important part of this
And I think as a
process.
petition warrant article,
Okay.
it looks more like that's the case.
Have you obtained the signatures you need for it?
Yeah, I have
Okay.
I have enough signatures, and I was gonna turn it in tomorrow. I just wanted to wait to give you folks
Okay.
the opportunity to
I
sign it
think
if
it's-
you chose to do that.
I think it's,
and
for
I-
me, it's important to remain objective until the voters decide, so I'm gonna remain objective.
And I think, really, there's, at some point in the not too distant future, there's grumblings of an addition either on the elementary school.
A lot of things coming up.
And, and these are the kind of things that I sit here and say, if you come in next year and say, or 2 years from now, whatever, pick a time and say, we need a X number of big dollar addition on to a school, and we have a big dollar item coming up for the town. I think the taxpayers stand there and go, well, there's only so much money in the pocket. What do we
Right.
do? And
Right.
so that's really, and I said that to the school board the other night. I go, my motive is just to get together, working together, so that we can the budget. I
Were you
trust.
speaking as a resident at
I
that
was,
meeting?
yes.
Okay.
I didn't have anything that said fire department on it, and I went up there because, again, in 25 years ago, I ran for school board, and I was, I went in with a specific agenda I was gonna make massive cuts to the budget. And, I had a lot of learning to do in my first year. Some of the stuff I did in my first year I wasn't proud of, and I apologized for, but I soon got to realize, and I still believe that to this day, that we sit here and go with $29 million budget, but you can't really compare the school to the town because they have far more employees and stuff, and we all know that people cost money. And I really truly believe this. I'm not looking to go in and make wholesale cuts. We have a pretty moderate budget committee right now, in my humble opinion, and I ask for stuff, and sometimes they support it, sometimes they don't. Far more often than not, they do support my request, and sometimes ask for more information, and I come back with it, and it still doesn't sell it, just like I don't always sell to you folks, and that's okay.
I don't know if you ever forgive us for that.
And that's why, no, I do. I figured out a long time ago, I wouldn't have survived this long in this business if I took it personal.
Right.
And so that's really, if my motive is, and I'm telling you folks the same thing I told the school board, my motive is for all of us to work together and come up with a plan so that at the end of the day, we're doing what we should be doing for the taxpayers and saying, all right, we got all these things to do. Now we got to figure out where to go. And I say this all the time about you guys. The pie's this big, and all of us want a bigger piece of it. And the tough part for the 5 of you is to say, well, you know, who do we give that to? The pie didn't get any bigger without costing money. So that's the tough part of the job. I can stand there all day long and say, this is what I need. And if I do a good job crying, then I get what I want.
And if you don't, be careful of the fire around your house.
That's right, yeah. But there again, that's 100% the motive behind it. You know, maybe it'll go nowhere. Maybe the voters will go, that's dumb, and not support it. And if they don't, they don't.
Okay. Thank
So
you.
my understanding is we took a break from public comment to discuss the topic of the petition warrant article. I think to save a future meeting, the select board could take a recommendation vote on that article now. We expect that it has the signatures and it'll be turned in tomorrow. You'll have to vote on it anyways. And so the language is over there, but it's a combined article, 2, 2, and 1 with an alternate from each. Does the select board feel comfortable making a recommendation vote on that now?
Yeah, I would like to see it be 3, 3, and 1, not just 5 members, and
If we change that.
That can't
Okay.
change, yeah.
that can't change?
Well, it could change at deliberative session.
Okay,
It could change at deliberative session, and it could change during implementation.
okay,
But it
Because
can't,
it is advisory.
yeah, but it can't change now because he's got signatures on 2, 2, and 1.
okay. So I would probably be remiss if I supported that small of an advisory budget committee. I think it needs to be 7 people looking at that material.
Yeah, so you can say no now and propose an amendment as a resident.
I would be
on-
glad to propose an amendment as a resident if that comes before us, sure.
At deliberative session for both the town and the school.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, okay.
okay. So,
Is there a
okay,
is
so I have to
there
go
a
to both sessions to
motion?
change that.
Move that we recommend the
Addition of the petition warrant article.
petition warrant article?
recommend the joint advisory budget committee petition warrant article?
That's what I meant.
Is there a second?
So yes.
Second.
But it's petition.
We're not
So
putting
we
it
are-
on. We're just recording a recommendation statement. So Jim seconded it. Roll call vote.
I'm sorry, what was the motion again?
To recommend the article, and so this will be the recommendation tally that will be included for deliberative session.
So Hardikoff, aye then.
Gibson, aye.
And check on.
Sakosha,
Oh, so it doesn't matter. Okay. I
My
kind of
God.
wanted to go, well, I kind of wanted to go to the voters first. I mean, I think it's a great idea.
Well, you have to make a recommendation.
Right,
You
this
could
is
vote
our
no.
recommendation on that.
Yeah,
It
okay,
could be a
I'm gonna
4,
vote yes.
it could be a 4-0-1. You could abstain.
Yeah.
But I would like to see, if it's going to be a decision-making and the school board's going to weigh in and we're going to weigh in, I would love to see it be 7 people. There's just so much material to digest.
I don't disagree with that. I think that, and again, it would be you folks' decision should it pass. I think the one thing that you want to be careful with.
We have 5
5?
And alternates.
5 and 2
and
alternates.
alternates, so, okay.
Then 2 alternates.
So we added a new business agenda item to discuss the petition warrant article. We took a recommendation vote that will be recorded on the warrant. We should go back to public comment to make sure there's no other public comment, and then we can close public comment and move on. Is that?
Right. So we'll do a public comment. Anyone in the room wants to comment?
Not you.
And is there anyone online who would like to comment? It doesn't look like it, so I'll close public comment and
I
then,
move we adjourn.
yes,
Oh, I second that.
yes. Roll call.
Hardkoff, aye.
Gibson, aye.
Mansher, aye.
Caviallo, aye. Jim,
Go shy.
thank you. Meeting adjourned.
What time is it?
10:14.